I knew the zombie outbreak was 24 hours away, so I quietly sealed my family inside our basement. The alert code is EK7. I have the manual at home somewhere, in a binder I printed off the county server 4 years ago and never thought I'd actually need. Page 47. There's a table of alert codes in that binder, and most of them are for things like infrastructure failure, or hazmat spills, or a plane going down somewhere near the reservoir. I've seen the table so many times I stopped really seeing it. You know how that happens with something you've memorized? It turns into wallpaper. I stopped seeing the table as real information and started seeing it as a list of things that probably wouldn't ever happen while I was the one sitting at the desk. EK7 is on page 47, second row from the bottom. I remember now, standing in the basement with a flashlight jammed between my arm and my ribs, unrolling my utility map across the concrete floor. I remember exactly how the entry reads. Something like, biological event with confirmed interhuman transmission, containment status unknown, cross-agency coordination required. I'd read it probably 15 or 20 times over the years. I'd read it the same way I'd read the evacuation procedure for a nuclear plant emergency, which is to say, I read it in the same tone I'd use to read an instruction manual for a dishwasher. I am not reading it that way now. The morning it comes through is a Tuesday, October. The leaves outside the dispatch window have already turned, and a few of them are coming off the oak tree in the parking lot, in that sideways October wind that hits cold for the first time and makes you think, okay, winter's actually going to happen again. I've got a cup of coffee from the machine in the break room. I've got 37 open channel logs from overnight, and a pending network sync with the State Emergency Management Office, and a sticky note on my monitor that says, call Jim Rhee, Tower 4, which I've been putting off for 2 days, because Jim is one of those guys who calls you back and talks for 40 minutes about things adjacent to whatever you actually called about. The alert comes through the secure feed at 7:51 a.m. It doesn't come with sirens or a red border around the screen or anything like that. It sits in a text box in the upper left corner of the secondary monitor, which I keep at about 30% brightness, because the fluorescents in this room are already harsh enough. Small gray box, text in a standard monospace font. ECAS-7. Source, CDC Regional Coordination. Timestamp. A long string of alphanumeric tags that are mostly classification markers. I look at it. I look at it for a long time. I read ECAS-7, and then I sit very still and look at the screen and drink my coffee and look at it some more. My brain does that thing where it refuses to accept a piece of information and tries to route around it instead. Like, okay, ECAS-7, but this is probably a system test. The CDC does those sometimes. Sends test alerts through the coordination network. Or maybe it's a relay error, and this is a code meant for a different region. Or maybe I'm reading the wrong line. I am not reading the wrong line. I look up the code in the system's reference database, which takes about 40 seconds to load, because the county server is old, and has been old for the 6 years I've been here, and will probably be old when I retire. The database opens. I find the code. I read the definition. Okay. I sit there. The thing about working in emergency communications for long enough is that you develop a very specific relationship with bad news. You receive it, you process it, and you pass it along to the people who need to act on it. That's the job. You're not the one making decisions. You're not the one in the field. You're the nervous system, not the muscle. Bad news comes in, and you route it. You stay in your seat, and you route it. I've been very good at staying in my seat. I pull up the full text of the alert. There's more underneath the header. There's always more. Supplementary information, cross-reference codes, a preliminary status note from a CDC field office that I have to authenticate my credentials to access. I authenticate. I read. The preliminary status note is 3 paragraphs long. The first paragraph is bureaucratic language that says essentially, we are flagging an outbreak of a rapidly spreading pathogen with neurological and behavioral modification effects in an unspecified number of affected individuals. Initial epicenter believed to be located in a cluster of 4 counties. Transmission confirmed human to human via direct physical contact. The second paragraph is more bureaucratic language about coordination protocols and interagency communication timelines. The third paragraph is shorter than the first two, and it's the one that makes me put my coffee cup down very carefully on the desk, and then fold my hands in my lap and just breathe for a minute. The third paragraph says, infected individuals display loss of higher cognitive function with retention of basic ambulatory function and apparent sensory-driven motor response. Infected individuals in most documented cases no longer respond to verbal communication and demonstrate aggressive physical response toward uninfected persons upon proximity detection. Do not approach. Standard biological precaution protocols apply. Estimated timeline from initial exposure cluster to regional spread. 18 to 36 hours. 18 to 36 hours. I read that again. Then once more. Then I look out the window at the oak tree dropping leaves in the parking lot. One of my coworkers, Brenda, is walking across the lot from her car to the building. She's got a lunch bag over her shoulder. She stops and picks up a leaf and looks at it, which is exactly the kind of thing Brenda does. She's one of those people who's genuinely delighted by leaves. I look back at the screen. 18:36 hours. The problem with knowing something before other people know it is that there's this very short window where the information is both true and private. Once that window closes, once the information gets out and gets processed by everyone else, it becomes shared reality, and then you have company in dealing with it. But right now, sitting at my desk at 7:53 in the morning, this information is just mine, and I don't know what to do with it. The county has protocols for ECAS 7 events. I know the protocols. Step 1 is to verify the alert through a secondary channel, which I'm supposed to do by contacting the state EOC directly by encrypted phone. Step 2 is to begin the internal notification cascade, which means contacting my supervisor and then working down the list in the emergency operations plan. Step 3 is to begin restricted public notification via the emergency broadcast system. I reach for the encrypted line to call the state EOC, and then I stop. Because my daughter Nora is 11 years old and she takes the bus to school at 7:15, and she was wearing her purple jacket this morning, the one with the fraying zipper pull that I keep meaning to fix, and she was eating toast at the kitchen counter when I left, and she had jam on her left cheek and didn't know it, and the bus takes her 45 minutes to get to school, and the school is 12 miles from our house. I pull my personal cell phone out of my pocket. I'm not supposed to have it out at the desk during shift. Nobody really enforces that rule, but it's in the handbook. I call Diane. She picks up on the third ring and says, "Garrett, I'm literally walking the dog. Can this wait?" She's a little out of breath. She walks our dog every morning after I leave for work and before Tyler wakes up. I say, "No, I need you to go get Nora from school." There's a pause. She literally just got there. I know. Why? Just go get her, right now. Tell the school it's a family thing. Don't go in and talk. Just pull up to the curb and get her out. Garrett, her voice shifts. She knows me. We've been married 14 years, and she knows the difference between me being weird and me being actually alarmed. What happened? Nothing yet. Please go get her. And when you get home, wake up Tyler. I need you all inside. Another pause. I can hear the dog, our dog Bruno, he's an old beagle, panting into the wind somewhere near the phone. Garrett, what is going on? I'll explain when I get home. Just do this for me right now. Please. Can you do that? She doesn't say anything for a second. Then, how serious? And the thing is, I've thought about this conversation. Not this exact conversation, but the category of conversation. Working in emergency communications means you have a background awareness that one day something real is going to happen, and you're going to know about it before your family does. I've thought about it mostly in the abstract, the way you think about things you don't actually expect to happen. I never figured out what I'd say. I'm still not sure. I say, the most serious it's ever been. She hangs up. I put my phone back in my pocket. Then I pick up the encrypted line and call the state EOC, because that's step 1, and I'm going to do step 1 before I do anything else, because if I stop following the protocol, then I'll panic, and I cannot panic yet. There is a very specific sequence of events that needs to happen in the next few hours, and panic is not on the list. The EOC picks up immediately. A woman's voice, very flat and professional. I give her the callback authentication code and tell her I received an ECAS 7 through the secure feed at 0751, and I'm calling to verify. She puts me on hold for 8 seconds. I count them, and then she comes back and says the alert is verified and active, and my county is within the projected affected region, and I should proceed according to established protocols, and additional guidance will come through the secure feed within the hour. I say thank you, and hang up. I sit there. Then I do something that I've never done in 6 years on this job. I pick up the escalation notification list. I hold the list in my hand for about 30 seconds. My supervisor is first on the list. His name is Dale Potts, and he has worked for the County Emergency Management Office for 22 years. And he's a decent man, with a bad knee, and a camper he takes to the lake every August. If I call Dale, which is what I'm supposed to do, Dale will begin the notification cascade. The cascade will reach the county administrator and the sheriff, and the health department and the hospital, and within a few hours, depending on how fast these things always actually go, which in my experience is never as fast as the plan suggests, there will be some kind of public notification, an emergency broadcast, maybe school closures, maybe an official shelter-in-place order, maybe. Or maybe the cascade will get stuck somewhere. Maybe someone up the chain will want to verify before they act. Maybe there will be a coordination meeting. Maybe people will argue about what the alert really means. I've seen that happen. I've seen critical information sit in the middle of a chain of command for 6 hours because nobody at the top wanted to be the one to pull the trigger on a public emergency without more confirmation. And in the meantime, 18 hours, maybe 36, but maybe 18. I put the list down. I pick up my phone and text Brenda, who I saw coming across the parking lot. I tell her I'm stepping out to deal with a personal matter, and she's on primary for the next hour. Brenda will be fine. She's been here longer than I have. Then I go to the supply room, which is a small room behind the break area that has a fire extinguisher, an extra printer paper, and a shelf of emergency supplies we're supposed to maintain for on-site use in case of extended operations. There are flashlights on that shelf, batteries, a portable hand crank radio, some basic first aid stuff. I take 4 of the D-cell battery packs. I take 2 of the flashlights. I take the hand crank radio. I put them in a county equipment bag and carry it to my car. I should not be doing this. These are county property. I know that. I am taking them anyway, because they're going to sit in that room gathering dust if I leave them there. And right now I need them more than the shelf does. My car is a 2017 Chevy Tahoe that I drive because of the cargo space. I put the bag in the back seat. I sit in the driver's seat. I grip the steering wheel with both hands and take several slow breaths through my nose. The list of things I need is very long. The list of things I currently have access to is much shorter. The list of time I have to turn the first list into the second list is 18 hours, maybe less. Okay, first things first. I take my personal notebook out of my jacket pocket. I always carry a small spiral notebook, a habit from when I was doing field work before I got the desk job, and I start writing. I'm going to write everything down because if I don't write it down, I'll spend energy trying to remember it, and I can't afford to spend energy on that right now. Immediate. Water. The basement has a utility sink, and we have a connection to municipal water. I need to fill everything I can find before water pressure fails, which it will, which it always does in a widespread emergency, because the treatment plant is automated, but the automation requires power. Food. We have 2 weeks of regular groceries at most, probably less. I need more, not stuff that requires refrigeration. Canned goods, dry goods, medical, basic first aid kit, antibiotics if I can get them, shelter. The basement needs reinforcing, the exterior door to the basement, the old coal cellar door, those old slanted wood and iron doors that open from outside. That's the weak point. Power, flashlights, batteries, candles, maybe the camping lantern from the garage. We have a small generator, but it requires gas, and running it makes noise. Communications. The county radio equipment I can't take, but the hand crank will get me public broadcasts. My personal scanner. I have a scanner at home. Information. I need to know what's happening, and I need to know it in real time. I look at the list. Then I add one more item at the bottom. and I underline it twice. Diane and Tyler cannot know the full truth yet. I stare at that line. There's something ugly about writing it down. But I need them focused and cooperative, not panicked. And the only way to get people who don't work in emergency management to cooperate with a preparation protocol in a short amount of time, without creating chaos, is to give them a problem they understand, instead of the one that's actually happening. I have a plan for that. I've been forming it since I read the third paragraph of the preliminary status note. There's a storm system that's been in the forecast for this week. It was already in the news. Nothing extreme, just a decent fall storm, potential power outages, maybe some flooding in the lower sections of town near the river. People have been mildly aware of it. Diane mentioned it 2 days ago, something about whether we needed to move the patio furniture. The storm is real. The timing is real. I am going to tell my family we need to prep for the storm. Seriously prep, more than usual. Because something in the forecast has shifted, and the county is expecting extended outages. I'm going to tell them this is coming from my work, which is technically true. Something is coming from work. I start the car. I have a route in my head already. First, hardware store on Collier Street, which opens at 7:30, and probably has low foot traffic this early. Second, County Mart, the large grocery on the edge of town. Third, home. Everything needs to happen before noon. That's when things will start shifting. The alert will work its way through channels, or someone else, somewhere will notice what I noticed. And once that happens, the stores will empty out and the roads will get difficult. It always goes faster than people expect, the moment when ordinary life tips into something else. I've seen it in smaller emergencies. A bad ice storm. A chemical spill on Route 9 3 years ago. There's always that last window where the world still looks normal, but the machinery has already started. I need to use that window. I pull out of the county building lot and turn toward Collier Street. The town looks exactly like itself. That's the thing that keeps catching me off guard as I drive. Kettler Falls, Ohio, looks completely normal at 8:15 on a Tuesday morning in October. A guy in a pickup truck is waiting at the light on Main and 3rd. 2 women are walking out of the diner on Clement with coffee cups. There's a school crossing guard at the elementary school corner, though I notice Nora's school is middle school, different location, doing the hand signal thing for a couple of kids. Everything looks like the 10,000 other Tuesday mornings I've driven through this town. Inside the hardware store, I walk fast and I have my list. Rope. Not cheap braided nylon. Actual load-bearing rope. 4 boxes of heavy-gauge wood screws. 2 more boxes of various sizes. A box of heavy washers. 12 heavy-eye bolts with nuts, the kind you'd use to anchor something to a wall. 6 large plastic bins with lids. Duct tape, 6 rolls. A box of contractor trash bags, the thick ones. A manual hand pump for a water drum. A good folding knife. Though I already have one, I'm buying a second. A pry bar. 4 more flashlights. Every battery on the rack that fits a flashlight. I take all of them, the whole peg, which earns me a look from the kid at the register but no comment. He bags them without saying anything. Total, $212. I pay with my personal debit card. At the county mart, I move differently. I grab 2 carts at once, and I'm methodical about it. I've thought about this. Not the specific list, but the concept. What feeds people without requiring power or refrigeration over an extended period? Canned goods, beans of every variety, chickpeas, lentils, crushed tomatoes, soup. I take every can of soup on the first shelf and half the second. Tuna and salmon, canned chicken, canned fruit, dry goods, rice, 25 pounds, 2 bags, pasta, 10 pounds, multiple bags, oats, cornmeal, sugar, salt, flour, cooking oil, peanut butter, every jar on the shelf, honey, the small squeeze bottles, 6 of them, crackers, the hard kind, in the sealed tins, coffee, because if I come home without coffee, Diane will know something is specifically wrong. Instant coffee also, boxes of it, water, the gallon jugs, I take 16. I have a water drum at home, a 55-gallon plastic drum I bought 3 years ago for some half-formed prepper idea that Diane made fun of, gently, and which has been sitting in the corner of the basement holding old paint supplies. I can drain that and fill it. Medications. The pharmacy section. Ibuprofen, acetaminophen, antidiarrheal. I take 4 boxes of each. Antiseptic, hydrogen peroxide, every bandage size they have. Nitrile gloves, 2 boxes. A pulse oximeter, a blood pressure cuff, antacids, sleep aids. I'm not sure about the sleep aids, but I take them anyway. The store is still quiet enough that I don't attract much attention. One woman in the canned goods aisle glances at my 2 full carts and raises an eyebrow. I give her a look like, I know, right? And she smiles uncertainly and goes back to whatever she was doing. I check the time, 9:14 a.m. Good. I check the county alert feed on my phone. 2 more classification codes have come through on the secure system, which I can access from my phone via the emergency management app. The codes are internal and most people wouldn't know what they mean, but I do. COCO 4, which means cross-agency coordination has been elevated, and Psych Alert, which is one I've never seen deployed in a real situation. It's for public information management. It means someone at a higher level has decided to control the timing of what gets released to the public and when. Which means the news hasn't gone public yet, but it will. It's a matter of hours now, not days. I push both carts to the register. The cashier, a young woman who looks like she's probably in community college, starts scanning without blinking at the quantity. I swipe my card. It goes through. Another $460-something. I load the car. I drive home. Diane is in the kitchen when I come in the first time, carrying the first load of groceries. She's got Nora at the kitchen table, and Nora has her backpack on still, and she's eating a second breakfast, which Nora always does after any disruption to routine. Tyler is standing in the kitchen doorway in sweatpants, looking confused and mildly irritated, which is how Tyler looks when he's woken up before 11. Diane looks at the grocery bags. Then she looks at me. She has that face she gets, carefully neutral, slightly tight around the eyes. It's the face she wears when she's decided to wait. I say, storm prep. There's more in the car. Tyler says, it's like 50 degrees out. That's not a storm. I say, cold front coming down from Canada. The forecast updated overnight. The county's expecting extended outages. I need everyone to help bring stuff in. Nora slides off her stool. She's a good kid that way. She'll help without needing to understand why. Tyler doesn't move. He's 15, and he operates on a very clear economy of effort. Why did Mom come get me from school? I look at Diane. She's looking at me. I say, I didn't want you both out when it started coming in. Tyler says, the storm doesn't start until Thursday. Forecast changed. He stares at me. He has my eyes and his mother's tendency to notice things other people miss, which in this moment is not a combination that's working in my favor. But he's 15, and there are limits to how far he'll push when he's still tired. He goes out to the car. Diane walks over to me. She speaks quietly. Talk to me. I say quietly. Not yet. Let me get everything unloaded, and I'll tell you more. Right now I need the basement door locked. She holds my eyes for a second. Then she says, okay. She turns and goes to help unload. I love her so much that it sits in my chest like a physical weight. The closest thing I have to a word for it is something like terror. We spend the next 2 hours doing the thing that I've been doing since I drove out of the county lot. The thing where you move and do tasks and don't stop moving, because the moment you stop moving, the weight of what you know will come down on you, and it's too heavy to let it land until you've done everything you can do to be ready for it. The basement of our house is a proper basement, not a finished one. Concrete walls, concrete floor. One small casement window near the ceiling on the east wall, and one more on the north wall. The old coal door on the north side. Those slanted iron and wood doors. A utility sink in the corner. The furnace and water heater taking up one full corner. A workbench along the south wall that I built when we moved in. Storage shelves along the east wall. It's about 900 square feet, which sounds like a lot until you're thinking about 4 people living in it. I've already decided on the floor plan. The workbench stays and becomes the main work area. The storage shelves along the east wall will be reorganized for supplies. The area near the furnace stays clear because of heat. We'll put sleeping areas in the west corner, which is the farthest from all the exterior entry points. First thing I do is the coal doors. I take the eye bolts and the rope, and I run a system of loops through the existing iron hardware on the inside of the doors. And then through the eye bolts I've anchored into the concrete sill on either side. When I'm done, those doors would require either a crowbar or a truck bumper to open from outside. Then I go up to the garage and find the sheet of half-inch plywood I had left over from a project last summer, and I cut it to fit over the north basement window, and I anchor it from inside with those heavy-gauge screws going into the window frame. The east window I can see through because it faces the side yard, not the road. I leave it for now, but I want to be able to cover it. Tyler watches me do the coal doors. He's smart enough to say nothing. Nora has appointed herself chief grocery organizer, and she is very serious about it. She's sorted the canned goods by type on the storage shelves and written the quantities on a sticky note. I tell her she's done a great job. The 55-gallon drum in the corner. I drag it to the utility sink and wash it out. It takes 2 good rinses to clear out the years of dust and old paint smell. Then I run the hose from the utility sink into it and start filling it. The municipal water pressure is fine right now. I let it fill and check on it periodically. While the drum fills, I go upstairs and do the rest of the house. I lock every exterior door. I check every window. The old farmhouse we bought 6 years ago has good solid windows, double-paned, the kind that don't rattle. I check the locks on each one. I bring both lamps from the living room downstairs. I grab all 4 of our sleeping bags and both mattress pads from the camping storage. I grab the 2-burner Coleman stove from the garage and both propane canisters I have for it. And I know right now I should go get more propane. But if I leave again, I'll have to explain why, and I don't want to have that conversation yet. By noon, the basement looks different. It looks like somewhere people could actually live for a while. Diane comes down the stairs and stands in the middle of the floor and looks at what I've done. She turns in a slow circle. Then she looks at me. She says, "Garrett." I say, "Yeah." She says, "What is actually happening?" Nora is upstairs getting something. Tyler is in the corner of the basement on his phone. I need to deal with that phone situation. That's going to be a problem. And he's pretending not to listen, but he is absolutely listening. I say, quietly, "Some people got sick, and it's spreading faster than they expected." She doesn't react much. This is one of the things about Diane. She processes fast, and she processes clean. She gets upset eventually. But first, she gets very still and processes. I've always admired it. I also find it slightly terrifying, because I can never tell where in the processing she is. She says, "The storm prep was the cover story." I say, "Yes." She says, "How bad?" I don't know yet. Bad enough that I wanted us in here. She looks at the canned goods, the sealed water drum, the locked coal door. She nods once, slowly. "Okay, that's it." That's all she says for now. She goes back upstairs to get more supplies, and I stand in the basement and feel something that I can't quite describe. Gratitude and guilt and the specific loneliness of being the person who knows something that you haven't told the people you love yet, even when you're trying to protect them by not telling them. I go back to work at 1 in the afternoon. I have to. Going completely dark on my shift would raise questions, and I need a few more hours at that desk. Brenda is there, and things are still quiet from her end, which means the notification cascade hasn't moved as fast as I expected. I sit down and I check the secure feed. 3 more alerts. ECA 7 confirmation from a second CDC office. A FEMA preliminary coordination notice. That one took my breath for a second, because FEMA doesn't show up fast. FEMA showing up in any kind of formal capacity within hours of an initial alert means someone much higher up than my county already has a picture of this thing that's bigger than what I can see from my desk. And then the third one, a partial field report from the State National Guard, flagged to County Emergency Management for awareness. It's brief. It says there have been confirmed incidents in 3 counties to the northeast of us. It uses the phrase, "rapid mobilization recommended." And then it uses another phrase that I have to read twice. Affected individuals not responding to standard crisis intervention. I copy the 3 alert texts to my personal phone in screenshots, which I should not do. I send them to my personal email, also something I should not do. The notification list is still sitting on my desk. where I left it this morning. Dale Potts is still first on the list. I call Dale. He picks up on the second ring. I tell him about the alerts. I tell him in sequence, in the flat professional voice I use for everything here. And Dale listens without interrupting, which is unusual for Dale. When I'm done, there's silence for a second. He says, "Jesus, Garrett." "Yeah. When did this come through?" 7:51 this morning. Another silence. "You should have called me at 7:51. "I know. Why didn't you?" I don't answer that. I don't have an answer that isn't incriminating in some way. He says, "Okay, I'm calling this in. You stay on the desk. I'll have someone there in an hour." He pauses. "How are you doing?" I think about the basement, the water drum, the locked coal doors. I say, "Fine, working the issue." He hangs up. I stay at the desk for 3 more hours, until the replacement shift comes in, and the notification cascade starts moving, and things get loud, in the way they always get loud when something is actually real. I monitor the feeds. I log calls. I pass information along the established channels. I do the job. Around 3 in the afternoon, the first public alert goes out through the state emergency system. It doesn't say outbreak. It says, residents of Kettler Falls and surrounding areas should be aware of an emerging health situation in the region and are advised to limit unnecessary travel and await guidance from local health officials. That's it. That's the public information that my county's emergency management infrastructure produces after more than 7 hours of classified alerts. I watch Brenda read it on her screen. She frowns. She looks at me. I shrug, which is a lie conducted entirely with my shoulders. At 4:15, I pack up my desk and I leave. The drive home is 15 minutes. It's usually 12, but something has changed in the traffic. There are more people on the road than a Tuesday afternoon typically produces. People going somewhere with the particular speed that people get when they've decided to do something, but they're not sure what it is yet. I see a pickup truck pulling a boat trailer. The boat is still on the trailer with the cover on it. Summer storage not yet finished, but the truck is moving fast, like it's going somewhere with purpose. 2 cars in the parking lot of the bank on my route that have their trunks open and people loading bags in. 1 car stopped in a gas station that already has a line. A short line, 3 cars. But the gas station never has a line on a Tuesday afternoon. I stop at the gas station and wait in the line. I fill the Tahoe. I go inside and walk the aisles. There isn't much left. Someone has already cleared out the bottled water section almost completely. I grab what's there. 2 6-packs of the small water bottles. A case of soda I don't want. 4 large bags of beef jerky. Every protein bar on the rack. A box of lighters, matches, 2 bottles of lighter fluid, and a large bag of charcoal. I also grab all the motor oil and a 5-gallon gas can that they sell on the rack near the back. I fill the gas can before I leave. At home, Diane has been busy. She's moved more things downstairs. Blankets, pillows, the camping chairs from the garage, a box fan that she's positioned near the top of the staircase to move air down into the basement, which is a good idea actually. The basement is going to need airflow. She's set up a small area with the sleeping bags arranged on the mattress pads and a small folding table with the camping lantern on it. She's been doing her own version of what I've been doing, the methodical preparation against a specific threat, except she's doing it without knowing the exact nature of the threat, and she's doing it because she trusts me. Tyler is on his phone in the upstairs living room when I come in. I ask him to come downstairs. He comes downstairs with his phone still in his hand, which is how Tyler goes everywhere. He and Nora sit on the camping chairs, and Diane leans against the workbench, and I stand in the middle of the basement floor and I tell them, not everything, not all of it, but enough. I say, people are getting sick, not like flu sick, something different. It's spreading fast, and it started northeast of us, and it's probably going to reach Kettler Falls by tomorrow. The county put out an alert this afternoon. Once the full information gets out, people are going to panic, and things outside are going to get difficult quickly. I need us in here, with the door locked, until I know it's safe. Nora looks at me carefully. Like a virus? Something like that? Tyler says, the government alert said to limit travel. That's not the same as a zombie apocalypse, Dad. He says zombie apocalypse the way you'd say something slightly absurd, with a little edge of humor in it, like he's checking whether the idea is as ridiculous as it sounds. I don't laugh. Tyler's face changes. He says, "Wait, are you—" "People who get sick," I say carefully, "stop being able to communicate or reason. They become aggressive. They attack other people. That's the transmission mechanism." I keep my voice flat and factual, because that's the voice that makes the information land without creating immediate chaos. I'm not telling you what to call it. I'm telling you what I saw in the alerts. It's fast, it's serious, and we are going to stay in this basement and be very, very quiet until it's safe. The basement is quiet. The water drum is full. The canned goods are stacked. The coal door is locked. Nora says, "What about Bruno?" I'd forgotten about the dog. I go upstairs and get Bruno and his food, and his water bowl, and his old dog bed from the corner of the living room, and I bring him down the stairs into the basement. He's a 12-year-old beagle who moved pretty slowly already. He sniffs around the basement floor for a while, and then lies down on his bed like this is perfectly normal, which for an old dog maybe it is. That night, we sleep in the basement. I don't sleep. I lie on a sleeping bag and listen to the house creak, and I listen to my family breathe. And I lie there with my hand on the scanner I've set on the floor next to me, earpiece in, listening. The scanner tells me things in pieces through the night. There's a lot of traffic on the county emergency channels, more than I've ever heard outside of a major weather event. There are calls that break off mid-sentence. There are long silences on frequencies that should have regular check-in traffic. Around 2 in the morning, there's a voice on one of the municipal channels that I recognize as the county sheriff deputy dispatch, and she's saying something I can't fully make out, and then there's a different voice, male, very loud, and then static. Around 3:30, the power goes out. The basement goes dark. The furnace stops. The box fan stops. In the sudden silence, I can hear everyone's breathing change as they wake up. I turn on the camping lantern. 3 faces look at me in the yellow light. I say, "It's okay. We're okay. Go back to sleep." Nobody goes back to sleep. At 6 in the morning, I go up the stairs and crack the door to the kitchen and listen. The house sounds like a house. I go to the kitchen window and look out. Our street is called Pemberton Drive. We're in a residential neighborhood about 2 miles from the center of Kettler Falls. Moderate density, houses with yards, old trees. The neighborhood was built in the 50s and 60s. The houses are a mix of 1-story ranches and 2-story colonials. Ours is a colonial, white with green shutters, 40-year-old oak trees in the front yard that drop leaves for about 6 weeks every fall, and that I rake aggressively, because I grew up in a household where leaf raking was taken seriously. What I see from the kitchen window, 3 cars parked on the street that weren't there last night. 2 of them are just cars. Somebody parked them and probably left. But the third one is parked half on the curb with the driver's side door open and sitting open, like whoever was driving it either got out in a hurry or didn't get out under their own power. I can see from here that there's something on the door frame, a dark smear that I look at for too long and then look away from. Down the block, the Carmichael house has a light on, a candle in the front window. The Carmichaels are an older couple, probably mid-70s. They've been our neighbors since we moved in. I go back downstairs. Diane is sitting up on her sleeping bag with Bruno in her lap and her phone in her hand. She says, "Internet's down." "Yeah. Cell service is almost gone. I've got 1 bar and it keeps cutting out. That'll get worse. The towers are on generator backup, but the backup doesn't last forever." She looks at me. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since yesterday morning." She says, "I mean before yesterday." I look at her. I know what she means. She's asking whether some part of me has always been waiting for this, whether the 55-gallon drum and the batteries, and the general preparedness mindset that's always existed around the edges of our house is connected to a specific fear I never talked about. I say, "I don't know, maybe always." She nods, not like she's satisfied with that, but like she's filing it away. She goes back to the phone. Tyler is awake in the corner. He's on his phone, but the screen keeps going dark, and he keeps waking it up. He says, without looking up, I can get on Jarrett's Wi-Fi from here. Barely. I say, Jarrett lives 2 streets over. His Wi-Fi goes pretty far. I always pick it up from my room. Jarrett is Tyler's best friend. He says, "Is Jarrett okay?" Tyler looks up. I don't know. His texts aren't going through. There's a silence. I say, we need to turn our phones off, or at least put them in airplane mode. The signal, people can trace signals to locate occupied buildings. Tyler stares at me. Who's going to trace us? Nobody right now. But if things get difficult out there, and people are desperate, they'll look for signs of life. A phone signal is a sign of life. He looks like he wants to argue. Then he looks at his phone, at the dark screen, and something crosses his face that I can't quite name. He puts the phone face down on his sleeping bag. I make breakfast. I use the 2-burner Coleman stove and cook oatmeal from the dry oats. It takes longer than the microwavable kind, and it comes out thicker, with a slightly grainy texture, and nobody says anything critical about it, which is how I know everyone is genuinely frightened. By 9 in the morning, we can hear things outside. The first sound is a car horn, distant and sustained. Someone leaning on the horn for a long time, several blocks away, and then stopping. 10 minutes later, more horns, plural, in different directions. Then something that might be shouting. I can't make out words, just the rhythm of raised voices from somewhere outside. We sit in the basement and listen. Nora is drawing in one of her sketchbooks. She draws when she's anxious, always has. And she has a specific way she holds her pencil when she's concentrating very hard on not letting what she's feeling show. I recognize it from the time she had to get stitches in her chin after a bike accident, and I was driving her to urgent care. Same pencil grip, same jaw set. She's 8 years older now in some ways. Tyler is restless. He's been sitting in one spot for 3 hours, and you can see it wearing on him. He's not the kind of kid who's good at sitting still in normal circumstances. He gets up and sits down and gets up again. I've given him a job, monitoring the radio with the second earpiece, and it's keeping him partially occupied but not enough. Diane has been making a formal list of our supplies. She went through every shelf, counted every can, estimated portions, calculated days. She hands me the paper. We have, roughly, 4 to 5 weeks of food at the caloric level we'd normally eat, or 6 to 8 weeks if we cut portions by about a third. Water, counting what's in the drum and the jugs, about 2 to 3 weeks for all 4 of us, more if we're not using it for cooking. I look at the list. 2 things are missing from it: the situation outside and a long-term plan. I don't have either of those yet, so I can't put them on the list. At 10:15, Tyler says, from the corner where he's been sitting with the scanner, "Dad, someone's calling on the county emergency channel." I cross the room and take the earpiece. "Anyone monitoring on this frequency, please respond. This is Patricia Holden at 412 Pemberton Drive. I am alone, and I need help. I have a minor child." I pull the earpiece out. I stand very still. 412 Pemberton Drive is 3 houses down from us. Patricia Holden is a woman I know by face more than name. I see her on the street. We've waved. I think she has a daughter around Nora's age. I don't know where she got a radio that broadcasts on the county emergency channel. Maybe she has a scanner too, though she's transmitting, not just receiving. Tyler is looking at me. I say, "What channel?" He tells me. I go to the hand crank radio. I find the frequency. I listen. Patricia Holden broadcasts again at 10:20. Same message, same voice. She sounds calm, deliberately calm, the way people sound when they're working very hard at it. Diane says, "We have to help her." I say, "I don't know what's between here and there." "It's 3 houses." "I know." She looks at me. "Garrett, I know what she's saying. I know exactly what she's saying. 3 houses down there is a woman with a child on a county emergency frequency because she doesn't know what else to do. And we have supplies, and we have space, and we can hear her. And doing nothing is a choice I will have to live with." I say, "Let me think about it." "Don't take long," Diane says. I go to the east casement window. I can see a thin slice of the side yard through the glass. I watch for 5 minutes. I don't see anything on that side of the house. I go upstairs with Diane's kitchen scissors and a kitchen knife in my belt, and I go to the living room window and I look out through a gap in the curtains. The street has changed since 6 this morning. The car with the open door is still there. 3 more cars are present that weren't before. 2 of them parked normally, and 1 that's gone up over the curb and stopped at an angle against the Hendersons' old white oak tree. The Hendersons' house, they moved out 2 years ago, and the house has been a rental ever since, has its front door standing open. I can see the dark gap of the doorway from here, and on the street itself, between the parked cars, there are 3 people walking slowly, in the way that people who are walking without purpose tend to walk. They're spread out, not together, not moving as a group. One of them is close enough that I can see she's a woman, maybe 40s, wearing a fleece vest and jeans, and she's walking down the center of the road with her head slightly tilted to one side and her arms at her sides in a very specific way that I immediately don't like. There's something wrong with how she walks. She's walking like someone who's walking in their sleep. I watch her go down the block. One of the other walking figures, a man, heavier, I can't make out more than that, veers off the road toward the Carmichael's house. He walks right up to the front porch. He stands there. I take my phone out and switch off airplane mode just long enough to check for a signal. 1 bar, flickering. I try to call Patricia Holden's number. I don't have it. I try directory assistance. Nothing works. I put the phone back in airplane mode. I go back downstairs. I tell Diane and the kids what I saw. Tyler says, "We have to go get her. Patricia, her kid." I say, "There are infected people on the street. You said they're walking slow." They are, and they go toward sound. That's the working assumption. He says, "So if you go out the back and go through the backyards all connect on this block. There's no fence between ours and the Kemper house, and then the Holden yard is right after that." I look at him. He knows the neighborhood well. He's been running through those backyards his whole life. I say, "You're not going." I'm not saying me. I'm saying that's the route. I think about it. I think about the 3 figures on the street and the specific wrong way they were walking. And I think about the distance between our back door and 412 Pemberton. The distance is maybe 200 feet through connected yards. I say, "I'll think about it." I don't go out that day. I spend the rest of the afternoon trying to get more information from the radio, which gives me pieces. The county emergency broadcast channel goes fully active around 2 in the afternoon, running a recorded message on loop. All residents are ordered to shelter in place. Do not attempt to travel. Do not assist or approach infected individuals. Await further instruction. It plays every 15 minutes. The voice on it is a pre-recorded official voice, calm and generic. On a different channel, around 4, I pick up something that isn't official. It's someone transmitting on a civilian ham band, a man's voice, not calm and generic. He's talking fast, and he keeps losing his train of thought and coming back to it. He says he's at the county hospital, the hospital on the north side, the big one, and that things there are very bad. He says the ER is overwhelmed, and there aren't enough staff. He uses a phrase that sticks with me. The ones that are still alive aren't helping. They're making it worse. I think I know what he means. He broadcasts for maybe 4 minutes, and then the transmission cuts off and doesn't come back. At 7 in the evening, I climb the stairs one more time and look out the front window. The street is dark now. The street light's out with the power, and there's no moon yet. I can't see much, but I can hear. Somewhere to the south, maybe 4 or 5 blocks, there's a sound that I don't have a good word for. A sustained, low, sort of shuffling sound, like water moving, except it's not water. It gets louder, and then slower, and then fades, like a crowd moving past. A large group of infected, I think, moving together, probably pulled toward a sound source. I go back downstairs and say nothing about it. That night I sleep for maybe 2 hours. I wake up at 3 a.m. because Bruno is growling. He's sitting up on his dog bed with his ears raised and his growl going at a very low frequency. Not aggressive, almost questioning. Something has his attention. I sit up and listen. I hear nothing specific, just the house. But Bruno keeps growling for another 10 minutes before he settles. I leave my hand on the hunting knife I've put within reach. Day 2. I go upstairs at 7 a.m. The kitchen window looks onto the same street. The street is mostly empty now. The 3 people I saw yesterday are gone. The cars are still there. The Hendersons' front door is still open. One new thing, the Carmichael's front window, the one with the candle, is broken. I can see the jagged outline of it from here. The candle is out. I think about the man who walked up to the Carmichael's porch last night. I go back downstairs. The situation over the next several days is a very specific kind of horrible that I had no real framework for before it started. The horror of not knowing. You're in a room. You can hear things. You can't see most of them. You're running calculations with incomplete data, and the calculations matter because your family's safety depends on them, and you have no way to verify your numbers against reality without going outside, which creates risk, which is the thing you're trying to avoid. What I know, infected people move towards sound. The ones I've seen don't appear to move fast. They're drawn to each other too, or to the same sound sources, which means they can accumulate in areas of noise. They don't seem to notice things that are still and quiet. They walk into things and pass things without apparent recognition. What I don't know, whether they sleep, whether they have any other sensory mode beyond sound, smell, for instance, or body heat, whether they're faster under certain conditions, whether there are variations in how affected individuals behave. The alert I read described apparent sensory-driven motor response, but didn't specify which senses. I'm working on the assumption of sound because that's what the behavior I've observed suggests, but I don't actually know. The 4th morning, Tyler pushes back. We're eating breakfast. Canned beans heated on the Coleman, crackers, peanut butter. Nora is giving Bruno some of her crackers, which I'm letting go for now, even though we can't spare the food. Tyler puts his spoon down and says, "How long are we staying down here?" I say, "Until I know it's safe to do something different." How will you know? Information. When I know more, I can make a better decision. He says, "What information?" From the radio? The radio's been playing the same thing for 2 days. Not just the radio. He's quiet for a second. Then, I need to check on Jarrett. I say, "Tyler, I know where his house is. I know this neighborhood. I can go and come back in 20 minutes. No. Then I'll go and you can't stop me." There it is. The thing that's been building for 4 days, and I knew it was building, and I've been trying to forestall it, and here it is now. Diane says, quietly, "Tyler." Tyler looks at his mother. Something in his face breaks a little. He says quieter, "I just need to know if he's okay." Diane says, I know. Nobody says anything for a minute. Then Tyler says, even quieter, almost to himself, "I've been talking to him from the window, upstairs, at night. The basement is very quiet." I put my spoon down. I say, "Which window?" "The east window. My bedroom." He looks at me and he knows what's on my face. "He's alive, Dad. He's 2 blocks over. He came to the edge of his yard and I could see him from my window. He's okay." Diane says, "Tyler, how long, when did this?" "The 2nd night. I couldn't sleep and I went up and I could see a light in his yard. I stand up. I go to the window in the basement, the east casement, the one I haven't boarded yet. I stand there and look out and I think about what Tyler just told me. The east window faces the side yard. You can't see 2 blocks from the basement. But Tyler's bedroom is on the 2nd floor. His window faces east, and from the 2nd floor, you can probably see over the neighboring houses into the yards and streets beyond." I say, "How many times have you gone up?" He's quiet. "Tyler, how many times?" "Every night." "With the window open?" "Just cracked. I wasn't making noise." I say, "Light?" He looks at the floor. I say, "Tyler, was there a light? Did you have a flashlight?" "Just my phone." I sit down. I put my face in my hands. I sit there for a moment. He says, "I was careful. I didn't stay long." He wasn't careful. He was a 15-year-old kid who was scared about his friend and went upstairs 4 nights in a row to stand at a window with a phone flashlight and look out into the dark, which means our house has been lit up from the 2nd floor every night for 4 days. And if anyone was moving through those backyards, or along that street, they would have seen it. Which means people know there's someone alive in this house. Which means Patricia Holden almost certainly knows it. Which is why she keeps broadcasting on that county channel. She can see the window from 3 houses down. I say, does Jarrett know which house we're in? Tyler doesn't answer. Tyler does. Jarrett, no. He knows it's our house. Yeah. I sit with that information. The damage is done. However it happened, our house is not the invisible shelter I thought it was. Someone out there, Patricia at minimum, maybe Jarrett, maybe others, knows this house has people in it. That changes the calculation. Staying quiet and invisible was never going to be permanent, but I'd hoped for more time. I say, here's what we're going to do. You're going to tell me exactly what you saw from that window. Every detail, every night. We're going to put together as complete a picture as we can of what's happening in the blocks around us, and then we're going to make a decision about our next steps, with actual information. Can you do that? He nods. He looks miserable. He says, I'm sorry. I say, tell me what you saw. What Tyler tells me, over the next hour, is actually a lot. He's been careful in his way. Not careful enough with the light, but careful as an observer. He has a 15-year-old boy's specific kind of attention to things that don't fit, and he's been watching the neighborhood every night for 4 days. Night 1, from the window. The street was quiet, only a few infected visible, moving slowly. He says they walked like people who are really drunk, but not like falling over drunk, more like really tired. He counted 6 or 7 on Pemberton Drive, spread out over about 2 blocks he could see, no groups. Night 2, more infected, maybe 15, he could count on the street, and in the yards, visible from his window. He says they seemed to be drifting toward the north, toward the main commercial street. He saw a car come down the block, headlights on, moving fast, and the infected on the street all turned toward the sound of the engine. They moved toward it, not fast, but all of them at once, all turning and pulling in the same direction. He says, it was like when you drag a magnet near a pile of metal filings, they all just oriented. The car got away, but the infected stayed oriented toward the north for a long time after. Night 3, fewer infected on the streets near our block. He thinks the group has moved north, but there were 2 specific ones that he says concerned him. 2 of them in the Kemper's yard, the house directly to our east, and they weren't moving. They were standing near the Kemper fence line, just standing. For most of the hour he was watching. He doesn't know if they were sleeping or just idle. Night 4. Last night, he saw Jarrett. Jarrett was at the far edge of his yard, which would be visible over the intervening houses from Tyler's 2nd floor angle. He was with another person, someone Tyler didn't recognize. They were moving around, carrying something. They disappeared behind the house and didn't come back. I say, 2 infected, standing in the Kemper's yard. Yeah? Not moving. They moved a couple times, like they'd turn and walk a few steps and stop, but mostly just standing. I think about this. The behavioral briefing I read said ambulatory function retained. It didn't say anything about rest cycles. If the infected have periods of reduced activity, like standing idle rather than actively moving, that's useful to know. That might mean there are windows of time when movement is relatively safer. It might also mean they're learning the territory. That thought sits in my stomach uneasily. I don't share it with Tyler. Instead, I say, you did good watching, and you need to stop going up there. I mean it. He nods. He knows he messed up. He's not fighting it. I say, I'm going to go get Patricia Holden and her daughter. Diane says from across the basement. When? Tonight. After dark. Early morning. Maybe 2 or 3. Tyler says the streets are quieter at night. Tyler says, there were still some of them out. I know, but the broad daylight option is worse. I look at Diane. When I go, I need everyone in this basement with the door locked until I knock 3 times. Diane says, I'm going with you. No, Garrett. Someone needs to stay with the kids. She holds my eyes. She doesn't like it, but she doesn't fight it either. At 2 a.m., I go upstairs with a flashlight that I keep covered with my hand. I have the hunting knife on my belt. I have the pry bar I bought from the hardware store in my right hand. I go to the back door, and I stand there for 3 minutes, listening. Nothing. I open the back door, and I step out into the October night. The air is cold, 40-something degrees, with that particular bite that comes after a day that got a little too warm for the season. The sky is clear, and there's a half moon, and I immediately hate the moonlight, because it makes everything visible, including me. I press close to the back of the house and look left and right along the backyard. The yard is empty. The Kemper yard, the next one over. I look. I don't see the two standing infected that Tyler described from last night. Either they've moved on or they've moved somewhere I can't see. I move along the back fence at the edge of my yard. Keep low, keep slow. No fast movements. The infected react to sound. I don't know their visual threshold, but I assume it's worse than their auditory one. So I keep moving and keep slow. The Kemper's yard is quiet. I cross it. The next yard is a house I don't know well. The family that moved in a year ago. Novak, I think their name is. The yard has a child's swing set in it. I give it a wide berth. The last thing I need is to catch the chains with the pry bar and make noise. The Holden yard. There's a light in the basement window. A flashlight, pointing up at the ceiling. Diffuse light, not direct. Someone is awake. I go to the back door, and I knock twice. Soft, and then after a beat, once more. Silence. Then footsteps. Then a voice, very quiet, from the other side of the door. Who is it? I say, just as quiet. Garrett Howell. 3 houses east. I heard your broadcast. A long pause. Then the sound of a bolt being pulled. The door opens a crack. Patricia Holden is a woman in her mid-40s, brown hair pulled back, wearing a zip-up fleece over pajama pants and running shoes. She's holding a kitchen knife. She looks at me for a second like she's checking something, and then she opens the door. "Come in," she says. I step inside. She closes and locks the door immediately. The kitchen is dark. She has her flashlight angled low. I can see she's been living in this kitchen, and the room just off it. There are sleeping bags on the kitchen floor, supplies stacked against the wall. Her daughter is in the next room. I can see her over Patricia's shoulder, a girl of about 10 sitting on a sleeping bag reading a book by flashlight. I say, "How long have you been in here?" "Since day one. I heard the alert and I stayed." She's been holding it together for days, and you can see it starting to loosen a little at the edges, now that there's another person here, who isn't her 10-year-old. "I saw your lights, your upstairs window, at night. I've been trying to figure out if it was safe." "It's safe enough. We have supplies. My basement is secured. I can get you there, but we need to go now, quickly and quietly." She looks at me, then she looks toward her daughter. "Caroline," she says, "get your bag." Caroline Holden moves fast. Kids are like that when the adults around them have made their fear explicit. They stop asking questions and they act. She has a backpack ready, which means she's been expecting this. Patricia has a bag of her own, a large hiking pack, very full. I take it and carry it. She carries Caroline. We go out the back door. The yard is still clear. We move through the Novak yard, around the swing set, through the Kemper yard. I see something in the far corner of the Kemper yard, a shape, stationary, against the back fence. I stop, hold up a hand. We wait. The shape doesn't move. I can't make out more than a silhouette in the moonlight. It might be infected. It might be someone's garden shed that I'm misidentifying in the dark. It's in the far corner, 20 feet from our line of movement. I keep us moving, slow, tight to the opposite fence. The shape stays still. We get to my backyard. I get everyone inside the back door. I lock it. I go to the basement door and knock 3 times. Diane opens it immediately. Patricia looks at her, then at the basement, then back at Diane. She says, "Thank you." Her voice cracks on it. Diane puts a hand on her shoulder and leads her downstairs. I stand at the back door for another minute, listening. Then I go down. We are now 6 people and a dog in a basement. 3 more days pass. The way time works in a basement is different from how it works normally. You feel each hour more distinctly because there's nothing to vary the hours. You lose the sense of time being a flow and start feeling it as a series of discrete, separately weighted units. This hour, with its particular quality of light through the casement window. That hour with its particular sounds from outside. You start to notice patterns in the sound patterns. How the level of noise from the street rises and falls through the day. How the period between about 2 and 4 in the morning is the quietest. How there are sometimes brief cascades of sound. Something that might be shouting, or engine noise, or something harder to categorize. That spike and then drop. Caroline Holden adapts faster than I expect. She and Nora do what kids do, which is find a space between them and fill it up with the thing they have available. In this case, they have the sketchbooks and a deck of cards that Diane found in a kitchen drawer, and a board game that was in the storage closet that nobody has played in 4 years. They play cards a lot. They don't talk much about what's outside, which I think is a deliberate choice on Caroline's part, and an unconscious one on Nora's. Patricia integrates quickly, because she's that kind of person. Organized, practical, doesn't need to explain herself constantly. She looks at what we have, and starts finding ways to improve it. She figures out a waste management system using the large plastic bins and contractor bags, which is a problem I'd been handling imperfectly, and sets it up properly with a privacy screen in the corner. She finds a way to reduce the smell. She calculates a more precise food rationing schedule than what I had, and posts it on the wall. I appreciate her. Tyler is still restless. He's been going up to his room window. I've forbidden it. He keeps doing it. I found out only because he came back down one morning with his shoes wet from the dew on the roof, which only happens if you lean out the window. When I confronted him, he didn't even try to lie. He just said, "Jarrett needs help." I said, "What do you mean Jarrett needs help?" He said, "He sent me a message when cell service came back for about 10 minutes this morning. His mom is sick." I sat down. The possibility of going to Jarrett's house, 2 blocks from here, through yards I don't know as well, with infected potentially in the area, to help a woman I don't know who may or may not be infected herself. I go through that calculation about 6 different ways, and it doesn't get better. I say, "How sick?" Tyler says. He says she started getting confused 2 days ago. She's not acting like herself. I say carefully, "Tyler, how she's acting, if she's confused and she's not herself, that might mean..." "I know what it might mean," Tyler says. His voice is very flat. "But Jared is 14, and he's alone in his house with his mom, who is turning into something, and he's sending me one-line texts every time cell service comes back and asking me if we're okay." I don't say anything. Tyler says, "I know you can't go. I know the risk." I'm not an idiot. He picks up his phone. He stares at it. I just need to know what I'm supposed to say to him. I don't have an answer to that. I genuinely don't. I say, "Tell him to stay away from her. If she's changed. If she's fully gone. Tell him to get out of the house and stay in his yard. Stay low, stay quiet." Tyler types. We wait. The reply comes through about 40 minutes later, in what must have been a brief signal window. Okay, nothing else. Just that word. I live with the weight of it. There's nothing else to do. On day 7, I see something from the east casement window that changes my thinking. It's midday, and I'm watching the side yard. Watching more systematically now, since I discovered that you can track fairly reliable patterns if you watch the same area at the same time each day. I've been doing this for 3 days. I have a mental log of what I see, when, and doing what. At about 11:40 every morning, 2 infected come around the north side of the Kemper house and walk through the Kemper yard toward the south. They do this consistently, not exactly 11:40. Sometimes it's 11:30, sometimes closer to noon, but the pattern holds. They cross the yard, they go along the south fence, they turn east, and they're gone from my view. Why would they do this consistently? That's what I can't stop thinking about. The behavioral model I've been working from is purely reactive. Sound source appears. Infected individual moves toward it. In the absence of a sound source, the infected individual does what? Random walk? Remains stationary? But these two come through the same yard at roughly the same time every day. That's not random. That's not reactive. That's something closer to a route. I don't think they're choosing a route consciously. I think what's happening is simpler, and in some ways scarier. They're developing habits. The same way an animal will walk the same path through the grass every day, not because it's reasoning about the optimal path, but because it's following the groove it made yesterday. Whatever they are now, they're not purely reactive. They're also, in a very limited way, habitual. This means a few things. First, areas they've been using repeatedly will be harder to move through at certain times. Second, timing your movement means working around habits, not just sound. Third, and this one is the one I keep coming back to, if they develop habits, then a place that keeps making noise will accrue habitual patrollers. Our block, for reasons I don't know, has become a place that certain infected regularly pass through. And if Tyler's upstairs window situation has been adding to our acoustic footprint, even just a little, that might be part of why. I share this with Patricia first, before the rest of the family. I trust her analytical instinct. She listens to what I've observed, asks 2 or 3 specific questions, and then says, "So, you think they're conditioning?" Something like conditioning. Not learning. More like groove following. She nods slowly, which means if we needed to redirect them, sound would do it. A consistent, louder sound somewhere else. But that also means we'd be attracting them in that direction. She says, "That could be useful if we were planning to move." I look at her. She says, "Are we planning to move?" I've been thinking about the plan for 2 days. It's not finished yet, but it's getting there. I have, in the storage room at the far end of the basement, a collection of binders that I've always meant to take home, to digitize and keep for reference. One of those binders is a utility infrastructure reference for Kettler Falls County that I put together 4 years ago for a county-wide emergency coordination project that ultimately never went anywhere. It has detailed maps of the county utility network, water mains, gas lines, fiber optic conduit routes, stormwater systems, and the utility access tunnels that run under several blocks in the downtown district, put in during a city modernization project in the late 80s. I know about those tunnels because part of my job is knowing about them. They're the kind of thing you know in theory and never actually think about in practice. The county uses them occasionally for utility access. I've been in them twice, both times for work-related assessments. They're not glamorous spaces. Low ceiling, maybe 5.5 feet. Concrete, cramped, utility conduit running along the walls. They smell like wet concrete and old pipe insulation. They go under about 8 blocks of downtown Kettler Falls and connect to several city buildings. The old Municipal Services Building, the Water Treatment Satellite Facility on 3rd Street, the county building where I work, and on the northeast end, the loading bay of the old community center, which was converted to a field storage facility years ago, but still has the tunnel access. If we can get to the tunnel entrance, which is on our street's parallel alley, about 4 blocks north, we can move underground, away from the infected on the surface, and come up somewhere that might give us a better position. The question is getting to the tunnel entrance. I look at my utility map, and I look at what I know about the infected patterns on our block, and I start to think about it seriously. Day 9 brings a new problem. It starts with a sound I've never heard before from outside. Knocking. Not at our front door, at our basement coal doors. Someone is knocking on the coal doors from outside. 3 hard knocks, and then a pause, and then 3 more. Not infected. Infected don't knock. They don't do that. Everyone in the basement is looking at the coal doors. Even Bruno has lifted his head from his bed. I go to the coal doors and put my ear against the wood. I say, barely above a whisper, "Who's there?" A man's voice, outside. "The name's Dennis. I'm not sick. I saw your lights. The upstairs window. Is there room?" I say, "How many of you?" "Just me." "Where did you come from?" 5 blocks south. Gas station on Clement. I've been there for 6 days, but things went bad last night. I need shelter. I say, "Stay right there. Don't move. Don't make noise." I go back to the center of the basement. Everyone is looking at me. Patricia says quietly, "Could be lying about being alone." I nod. I know. Diane says, "What do we do?" I say, "I need to look at him first." I go upstairs, carefully, to the kitchen. I look out the back window. I can see the cold door area from a slight angle, just enough. There's one man there, standing very still, which speaks in his favor. He's wearing a heavy jacket and carrying a backpack. I can't see his face well, but he's standing with his hands visible at his sides. I go back to the kitchen door and open it a crack. "Dennis." "Yeah." He doesn't move, doesn't turn. "Come to the back door." One person, slowly. He comes around the side of the house to the back door. I let him in quickly and lock it. In the kitchen light, what little we have, just the filtered daylight through the blinds. He looks okay, 40s maybe, heavy through the shoulders. He's got a cut on his cheekbone, a few days old, partially scabbed. He's pale, and he smells like he hasn't had a shower in 9 days because none of us have. He has dark circles under his eyes that are well past the usual fatigue darkness. I say, "Hold your arms out." He does. I check both forearms, the most common visible bite location. I ask him to show me his neck, which is the second most common, based on the alert briefing. Nothing visible. He watches me do it without comment. He's been in enough contact with reality in the last 9 days to understand why I'm checking. I say, "What happened at the gas station?" He says, "There were 4 of us there, running low on water. I went to look for more, and while I was gone, I came back, and the place was full of them, maybe 20, inside and outside. I don't know what brought them. I couldn't get back in. Your people. I don't know." He says it clean, without elaborating. He's already dealt with that particular grief. I take him downstairs. I introduce him, and he sits with a can of soup and doesn't say much. Caroline Holden studies him from across the room for about 30 seconds, and then goes back to her card game with Nora. Tyler watches him. Patricia watches him with the specific watchfulness of someone who's been alone with a child in a confined space for 9 days and has strong opinions about who deserves trust. He stays. The next morning is when Tyler's message from Jarrett stops coming. Tyler's phone shows one last text, received sometime overnight during a signal window. "She got out of the room. I had the door blocked, but she got out. I'm in the backyard. Don't come." Then nothing. Tyler sits with his phone for a long time. He doesn't say anything, and he doesn't cry. Not in front of anyone. He goes to the far corner of the basement and sits with his back to the wall and doesn't come out for 2 hours. I go sit next to him after a while. I don't say anything either. I just sit there. After a long time, he says, "Was there anything else I could have done?" I say, "I don't think so." He says, "I should have gone." I say, "You couldn't have helped her, and you might not have made it back." He's quiet. I say, "I know that doesn't make it better." "No," he says, "it doesn't." We sit there. Day 10. I spread the utility map on the workbench, and I gather everyone around it, all 6 adults, and Tyler, and the 2 girls. I say, "We need to move." Patricia says, "Why now? Food is stable. We haven't had a breach." Because of this. I put my finger on the map at a specific point, 4 blocks north. This is the alley access point for the utility tunnels that run under downtown. If we can get to that access point, we go underground. We move 8 blocks through the tunnels without any exposed surface movement. We come up here. I move my finger, the loading dock of the old community center, which is now county storage. I know the building. I have keys, work keys. I keep them on my personal key ring. Dennis looks at the map. What's at the community center? Potentially, a larger space, county emergency supplies if any were pre-staged there, and access to the county vehicle pool, which includes utility trucks with full fuel tanks, because county vehicles are always fueled before the weekend. There's a silence while everyone processes this. Diane says, "Fuel. Why do we need fuel?" I say, "Because we're not staying in this county for winter." More silence. I say, "The plan is, use the vehicles to move west, away from the urban center." The spread pattern from the alerts I read was radiating outward from the northeast cluster. West is our best direction. There are 3 small towns between here and the state line: Haines, Collerton, and Ridgemore. Ridgemore has a population of about 4,000 and is 62 miles from here, on a state highway that bypasses Kettler Falls. It's small enough that the infection spread might be slower, far enough that we might actually get there, and large enough to have infrastructure worth using. Patricia says, "That's a lot of might." Yes. She looks at the map. And the 4 blocks to the tunnel. How? I tell them the route I've worked out. We go through the backyards, staying east of Pemberton, to avoid the heavy foot traffic pattern I've observed. We move at 2:30 in the morning, the quietest window. We move slow, single file, no lights. I'll go first with the pry bar. Dennis will take the rear with whatever he has. He has a hammer, which he mentioned, and a kitchen knife. The 2 girls stay in the middle. No talking, no stops. Tyler says, "What about the 2 infected that come through the Kemper yard every day?" We go around the east side of the Kemper house. That puts us on the opposite side from their usual route. Dennis says, "What if there are groups? If we encounter a group, we stop and go still. We wait. We don't run." Diane says, "And if we can't wait?" I say, "We deal with it." Not a satisfying answer, the best I've got. I look at everyone. We leave tomorrow night. Between now and then, I need everyone to pack light. Food for 3 days, water for 2, 1 sleeping bag each, 1 change of clothes, whatever medical supplies fit. Nothing metal that will clank. Bags secured tightly, no loose items. If something falls, it stays on the ground. Nora raises her hand slightly, like she's in school. I almost laugh. I say, "Nora." She says, "What about Bruno?" I look at Bruno. Bruno is 12 years old, and he weighs about 35 pounds. And he's been wheezing slightly for the past 2 days that I've been trying not to think about. He's also a beagle. Beagles make noise. That's a central fact about the breed. They are vocal dogs. They howl. They bay. They bark at things I can't see. The last 10 days, Bruno has been mostly quiet, which is unusual for him, and which I think is a function of the stress of confinement doing something to his behavior. But if something startled him in an alley at 2:30 in the morning, he would make noise. He would definitely make noise. I say, "We'll carry him." Tyler exhales. I say, "We'll carry him." He doesn't walk. He gets carried the whole way, and if he makes any noise, we cover his mouth and keep moving. Nora nods, satisfied. That night I do a final review of the utility map by flashlight. The tunnel entrance is in the alley between Pemberton Drive and a parallel alley called Service Row. It's a name from the county utility documents, not an official street name. The entrance is an iron hatch set into the alley surface, about 2 feet by 3 feet, with a county utility lock that my work key ring will open. I've been through that hatch twice. It's stiff, but it works. From the hatch, you go down a fixed iron ladder, 6 rungs, maybe 7 feet, into the main tunnel. The tunnel runs north-south through downtown and has several lateral branches. I want the lateral branch that runs east toward the community center. That branch is about 400 feet long and has 3 junction points where you can go straight or turn. I've drawn the route on a separate paper. First junction, straight. Second junction, right. Third junction, straight. That brings us to the ascending ladder at the community center loading dock. I memorize it, and I write it on my forearm with a ballpoint pen, which Diane sees and doesn't comment on. Tomorrow night, I lie on my sleeping bag, and I listen to the sounds outside, and I run the route in my head until I fall asleep. 2:15 a.m. I wake everyone. Getting 7 people and a dog ready to move in the dark without making noise is a project in itself. We've been packed since yesterday evening, but there's the getting up part, the putting on shoes part, the settling the dog onto a makeshift carrier made from 2 backpack straps part. That last one takes 15 minutes and is conducted in whispers. At 2:30, I unlock the back door. The night is cold, 30-something degrees. A hard, clear cold that makes your eyes water. No moon tonight, which I chose the timing for. The backyard is dark. I stand on the back step and let my eyes adjust. Clear. I go. Single file behind me. Diane, Nora, carrying the front of Bruno's carrier. Tyler, carrying the back. Caroline, Patricia, Dennis. We cross our backyard. Wet grass that squishes slightly with every step, but not loudly. We get to the fence line and I lift the loose board in the Kemper yard fence. I found it 3 days ago when I was doing perimeter checks. Everyone through. The Kemper yard. I stop. Look right. Toward the south fence where the habitual infected come from. Empty. I go left, east side of the house, away from their usual route. Something is behind the Kemper house. Not moving, just present. I sense it before I see it, and I stop, and everyone behind me stops, and I stand for 30 seconds without moving. There's a shape near the southeast corner of the Kemper house, standing, about 15 feet away. I wait. It doesn't move. I move, very slowly, clockwise around it, keeping 12 feet of distance. It doesn't track us. It doesn't turn. I get closer and I can see it's infected. The head tilt posture. The wrong stillness. But it's dormant right now, in whatever idle state infected go into when there's no active stimulus. We get past it. We get to the far side of the Kemper yard and I help everyone over the fence into the Novak yard. The swing set is on the other side. I hold the chains while everyone passes. They don't rattle. Novak yard. Then the yard behind that. A house I don't know. Dark. No signs of life inside. We cross it. Then the alley. Service row. I come out of the yard and onto the alley surface. The alley runs between the backyards and a row of old utility poles and a concrete retaining wall on the other side. It's darker here than the yards because the trees are gone. I look both directions. Left, toward the main road. Nothing visible, but I can hear something in that direction. Something moving. I can't identify the number or distance. Right. North. The direction we need to go. Empty. I wave everyone out. We go north in the alley. Single file. Close to the retaining wall on the right side. No lights. The ground is packed dirt and gravel, and occasional cracked asphalt, and it's uneven enough that I have to move my feet carefully, and I can hear everyone behind me doing the same. 1 block, 2 blocks. At the 3rd block, the alley opens onto a cross street, and I stop at the edge. I look across. Infected. I count 3 visible, all on the far side of the cross street, moving slow in the loose way that means they're not tracking anything specific. 30 feet between us and the alley, continuation on the other side. I wait. The 3 infected move. 1 goes north, slow. 1 goes east, disappearing around a building corner. 1 stays put, standing in the street, facing away from us. Window. I go across. I try to move at a walking pace, because running is louder than walking, and a walking pace is faster than the infected move, and doesn't require jumping. Diane behind me. Nora and Tyler. The carrier sways slightly as they move, but Bruno stays blessedly still. Caroline, Patricia, Dennis. We're across. 1 more block north. The alley widens slightly at the spot I'm looking for. A slight indentation in the retaining wall. An older section of concrete where the city did work years ago and left the surface slightly different. I shine my covered flashlight briefly, just a second, at the ground. The hatch. It's a standard county utility access hatch. Iron, painted over several times. The lock is a heavy padlock through a welded hasp. I take out my key ring and find the right key. I have 4 utility lock keys, and I've tested them mentally 100 times. I know which one. Flat face, slightly worn, 3rd from the left. The lock opens. I keep it from swinging open because the squeal of the hinges is the thing I'm most worried about. I ease the hatch up, both hands, lifting slow. It still makes a sound. A low, grinding complaint from the hinges, and I stop for a second and listen. Nothing reacts. I get it up the rest of the way and prop it with the folding knife. Down. I go down first, 2 rungs, and wait. Diane hands Bruno down to me, and I hold him, while Nora climbs down. Then Tyler, then Diane, then Caroline, who's been completely silent this entire time. Remarkable kid. Then Patricia, then Dennis, who pulls the hatch down carefully behind him. Darkness. Complete darkness, except for the covered flashlight in my hand. The tunnel is exactly what I remember. Low ceiling, concrete, pipes and conduit along both walls, the faint smell of wet concrete and old insulation. The floor is dry, slightly rough. The temperature drops about 15 degrees from outside. It feels like the inside of a cellar. I let the flashlight out a little. There's room to walk single file. Ceiling about 5'4". I have to bow my head slightly, and Dennis, who's taller than me, will have a harder time. I hold up one finger. Go slow. Then I point forward. We go. The tunnel is quieter than outside in a very specific way. You lose all the ambient outdoor noise and you replace it with the sound of your own feet and breathing, and the slight drip of water somewhere ahead. It's disorienting at first. Your ears strain. You keep expecting to hear something that isn't there. First junction. I go straight. Second junction. I turn right. Third junction. I go straight. My forearm says so, and it's right. The ascent ladder at the community center end is identical to the entry ladder. 6 iron rungs, a small platform, another hatch. I check the hatch. This one doesn't have a lock from below. It pushes up. I push it up 2 inches and look. A room. Dark. Concrete floor, high ceiling, the particular emptiness of a large storage space. I can see shapes that are cardboard boxes and shelving units, and the far wall has a large roll-up door that's closed. No movement. I go up. I hold the hatch for everyone else. We're in the community center loading dock. I close the hatch carefully. Everyone stands in the dark of the storage room and breathes. Nora sets Bruno down on the floor. Bruno shakes himself, a full body shake, and then puts his nose to the ground and starts sniffing a precise circuit of the room. Old dog, new smells. He deals with things in his own way. Dennis says quietly, "That worked." I say, "We're not done." The community center building is larger than the loading dock. There's a connecting door from the storage room into the main building, the old gymnasium that was converted to a field coordination center years ago. I have a key for that door too. I open it and we go through. The gymnasium is empty and dark. The windows are high up on the walls, clear-story windows, set near the ceiling, and there's enough ambient light from outside that I can see the space. Long tables, folding chairs stacked along the walls, county equipment in cases along one side, a rolling whiteboard with a meeting agenda still written on it, which is the most deeply normal thing I've seen in 10 days. Kettler Falls Emergency Operations Coordination Meeting, agenda. Underneath that, bullet points, agenda items from a meeting that never happened. I go to the far side of the gymnasium, where I know the vehicle access bay is. This is the county fleet maintenance bay, used for servicing county utility trucks and equipment. It connects to the gymnasium through a heavy fire door. I find it, and I open it. The maintenance bay has 3 vehicles in it. 2 white county utility pickup trucks and a larger work van, with the county seal on the side. All 3 have full fuel tanks. I find the fuel log on the maintenance board. It was checked Friday, which was now 11 days ago, Friday morning, before. Dennis looks at the vehicles. He says, "Where are we going?" I spread the road map I pulled from the glove box of the nearest truck. I show him Route 40 West, Haynes, Collerton, Ridgemore. He looks at the map for a while. He says, "You think it'll be clear?" I don't know. He says, "What's in Ridgemore?" Best case, a community that's managed the first weeks better than here. Small enough population that the initial spread might have been slower. A lot of farmland to the west, which means food-growing infrastructure that doesn't require urban supply chains. He says, "And worst case?" Same situation as here, or worse. He looks at the map. He nods. We spend the rest of that night in the community center building, inside the gymnasium. We eat, we sleep, everyone except me. I spend 2 hours going through the supply cases along the wall. There's more there than I expected. Someone had started staging emergency supplies here before things collapsed. Water, rations, a medical kit, 2 portable communication units, 4 reflective safety vests, a case of chemical light sticks, and a box of county maps and utility reference documents. I take all of it. At 6 a.m., I go to the clerestory windows and look out. From the high windows, I can see parts of 3 streets. The streets look like a city that's been emptied, and then partially refilled with people who don't know what cities are for anymore. There are infected everywhere in my field of view. Not a mob, not a pressing horde, just individuals in small clusters moving in their loose, aimless, pattern-following way. Some streets are clear, others are not. On the block to the north, a building is burning, has been burning for a while, the fire low and the smoke white and heavy against the cool morning air. I also see, on the street directly south, a truck, not a county truck, a civilian pickup, older, with plywood panels bolted over the bed, and what looks like a plow attachment on the front. It's moving slowly down the street, and it has a plow, and it's using the plow to push infected out of its way. The infected it pushes don't get up. They go under the plow, and then the truck rolls over them. Someone has been out here doing this. Someone has been building a modified vehicle and clearing streets. I watch the truck for a while. It turns east and goes out of my view. I go downstairs and I wake Dennis first. I say we need to go now, before it gets light enough that things are more active. He's up immediately. Night before last he was alone. Now he moves like he's part of something. I appreciate that. We wake everyone. Quick breakfast, protein bars, crackers, water. We load supplies into the work van. I take the van because it has the most space, and the enclosed cargo area means people won't be visible. Dennis takes one of the utility pickups, because if we encounter a barrier, we'll want the second vehicle's weight and bumper. Tyler asks to drive the second pickup. He's 15 and doesn't have a license, and I say yes without hesitation, because the alternative is he rides in the back of the van, and I need someone who can handle the second vehicle. We drive out of the maintenance bay, Dennis rolling up the bay door, and then we all going through before he pulls it down behind him and gets back in the pickup. I drive the van. Diane is in the passenger seat. Patricia is in the back with the girls and Bruno. Tyler is in the pickup behind me, following. The street outside the community center is clear for 1 block. I turn west. The first 2 blocks are workable. Infected on the sidewalks, a few on the street, all of them turning toward the engine sound and moving toward us, too slow to be a threat at even 15 miles an hour. I don't swerve for individual ones in the street. I slow down. They're walking. They step in front of the van and I have to stop twice. The second time one of them is standing directly in front of the hood and won't move, and I tap the horn once, the shortest tap possible, and it lurches toward the sound of the horn, toward the front of the van, and then sort of folds against the bumper, and I drive forward slowly, and it goes down and stays down. Diane doesn't say anything. She holds her door handle. 3 blocks in, the street is blocked. 2 cars sideways across the road, not parked that way on purpose. I reverse and go north 1 block, and then west again. Dennis follows. This block opens up. I get to 30 miles an hour briefly. It feels like flying. After 10 days of a 900-square-foot basement, going 30 miles an hour feels like flying. We reach the Route 40 on-ramp. The ramp is partially blocked. A delivery truck has jackknifed across the top of the ramp, and there's a gap of maybe 9 feet on the left side, between the truck trailer and the guardrail. I size up the van. The van is about 80 inches wide, which is 6'8". 9 feet is 108 inches. We have 24 inches of clearance. I take it at 5 miles an hour. The right mirror clips the trailer and snaps off. The gap gives. We're through. Dennis follows in the pickup, wider in the body, and takes the gap differently. He goes up on the guardrail slightly. The driver's side tires up on the concrete and grinds through. He makes it. Route 40 west. The highway is something I wasn't prepared for, and something I should have prepared for better. It's not clear. It's not empty. It's a stopped parking lot of cars. Because of course it is. Because when things started going bad, everyone who was going to try to flee the county did it in a car, on the main road, and it stopped here. Thousands of people thought of this route at approximately the same time, and it clogged. I slow to a stop before the first cluster of vehicles. The cluster is about 20 cars deep. then a gap, then more cars. I can see that some lanes are more blocked than others. The right lane is fully stopped. The center lane has a partial gap. The left lane, which has a gravel shoulder on this stretch, is more open. I look at the gravel shoulder. I take it. We go on the gravel shoulder at about 20 miles an hour, which is rough enough that the van bounces and rattles, and the canned goods in the back shift and clatter against each other, and Patricia has to hold Nora and Caroline steady, 70 or 80 yards on the gravel, and then the shoulder narrows where a car has drifted half onto it. I stop. Get out. Look at the car on the shoulder. No one in it. Keys still in it. I reach in, put it in neutral, and push it. I've pushed cars before. It starts rolling. I get it rolled far enough and then I run back to the van. Drive through. This process, gravel shoulder, obstacle, stop, push, or squeeze around, continue, takes us about 6 miles before the highway opens up into something more like a navigable road. Beyond 6 miles, people either didn't try to flee, or they got through, or they stopped and turned around. But whatever the reason, the right 2 lanes of the westbound side open up and I get to 50 miles an hour, and the van hits that speed like it's been waiting for it. I look in the rearview mirror. Dennis's pickup is still there. I exhale, slowly, through my mouth. Diane puts her hand on my arm without looking at me. Haines is 8 miles out. The town appears on the right side of the highway, like a ghost of a town. Things look intact from the highway. The buildings are standing. There's a water tower I can see. No obvious fires. But I don't stop in Haines. The highway doesn't go through Haines proper. There's an exit, and then Route 40 continues. I keep going. The exit for Haines passes. I see one infected standing on the exit ramp, watching us go by with the specific unfocused attention of something that can sense but not comprehend. Collerton is 18 miles west of Haines. We get there in good time, the highway clear enough to move. The Collerton situation is worse than I expected. The exit for Collerton is blocked. Not naturally blocked, blocked on purpose. A line of vehicles, end to end, across the off-ramp, and beside them on the shoulder, a hand-painted sign on a sheet of plywood that says Collerton full stop here. Below that, another sign, we shoot. No punctuation, no question. I slow down at the exit. Look at the sign. Look at the vehicle line. No one visible behind the vehicle line, at least not that I can see. I keep driving. Dennis pulls up beside me at a wide stretch. His window is down. I roll mine down. He says, "Collerton? They're not letting people in." He nods. He lets me back in front. He follows. 22 more miles. Ridgemore. The exit for Ridgemore is not blocked. That's the first thing I notice. The exit is open. That can mean many things, some of them good. I take the exit at 15 miles an hour. Careful. The road from the exit to Ridgemore proper is about a mile of state highway, lined with farm fields on both sides. Flat land, no trees. I can see a long way from here. There are no visible infected on this road. There are no cars on this road except one, parked at the shoulder, no one in it. At the edge of town, there's something else. A checkpoint. 2 pickup trucks, angled across the road, and several people behind them. Real people, standing, watching us come, not infected. People with coats on and what looks like hunting gear, and one of them is holding a rifle, which is visible and pointed at the sky rather than at us, which is an important distinction. I slow to a stop about 30 feet from the trucks. A man walks toward us, 40s, gray beard, wearing an orange hunting vest over a heavy canvas jacket. He has a pistol holstered, not drawn. He walks up to my window and looks in, at me, at Diane, at the back of the van. He says, "How many?" I say 7 plus a dog, all uninfected. One adult male came in separately in the pickup behind me. He looks back at Dennis's pickup. He looks at me again. "Where from?" "Kettler Falls." He says, "That bad?" "Yeah." He's quiet for a second. "What did you bring?" I tell him, "Food for 3 days. We can recalculate, but that's what we loaded. A medical kit, 2 county communication units, utility maps for Kettler Falls County, 3 weeks of water supplies, roughly. A generator in the van's cargo area that I found in the community center. 60 gallons of diesel in 2 fuel containers that I took from the community center maintenance bay. He looks at me for a long time. He says, "Fuel." I say, "Yeah." He steps back. He waves to the people at the trucks, and one of them gets in a truck, and the truck moves. He says to me, "Come on then." I pull forward. The town of Ridgemore has been doing something that I hadn't fully expected from a small Ohio town. It's been organized. Not perfectly, not without its own internal disputes and rough edges, but in the 2 weeks since the outbreak started, a group of people here, the mayor, 2 deputies, several farmers who knew each other, a volunteer fire captain, had gotten ahead of the situation in ways that my county never managed. The checkpoint is the most visible part of it, but beyond the checkpoint, the town has a system. Houses on the north side of town, near the grain elevator and the farm cooperative, have been converted into communal housing. Families doubling up, supplies pooled. The gas station at the town center has been secured and its fuel inventory locked and rationed. The high school on the south end has been turned into a supply depot and community gathering point. We're processed through the checkpoint in about 40 minutes. Health check, inventory of what we've brought. Brief interview conducted by the man with the gray beard, whose name turns out to be Kevin Purcell, who is the volunteer fire captain and who is in practice running most of the town's emergency operations, because the mayor is a 68-year-old man with a bad heart and has sensibly handed operational authority to Kevin. Kevin is blunt and practical, and he shakes hands too hard, and he has the particular exhausted energy of someone who has been running on adrenaline and 4 hours of sleep per night for 2 weeks. He looks at me when I explain my county emergency communications background and the utility maps and the knowledge of infrastructure. He says, "You're going to be useful." He means it as a compliment. I take it as one. We're assigned housing, a 2-bedroom house on Maple Street that's currently empty because the previous occupants left before the checkpoint was established and didn't come back. The house is clean, has well water from a hand-pumped system, and has a wood stove in the kitchen that becomes the most important appliance we own within 24 hours of arriving. Patricia and Caroline get the bedroom. Diane and I and the kids take the living room. Dennis takes the basement, which he seems to prefer. Nobody argues about any of it. That first night in the house in Ridgemore, with a fire in the wood stove and actual walls around us, and the knowledge that there are people outside with rifles who are, imperfectly and humanly, watching the approaches to the town, I sit at the kitchen table with a cup of actual hot coffee that someone in the community depot had stored in vacuum-sealed bags, and I look at my hands. They've changed, not dramatically. They're the same hands, but there's a cut on the right palm from the utility hatch, and there's old callus where the pry bar wore against my grip, and the nails are dirty under the edges, and there's something written on my forearm in ballpoint that's mostly faded, but still legible. Straight/right, straight. I look at that for a while. Diane comes and sits across from me. She has coffee too. We don't say anything for a long time. Then she says, "I knew when you came home that day." I look at her. She says, "You had the face. You know the one. The problem-solving face. You had it pointed at the wrong things. You had it pointed at Nora's lunch bag and the dog's water bowl. You only get that face when something's gone wrong and you're filing it away." I say, "You didn't say anything. You were handling it. I was lying to you." She thinks about that. "You were managing the information so we wouldn't panic." That's a generous framing. She wraps both hands around her mug. "It worked." I say, "That doesn't mean I should have done it." She says, "No, it doesn't." Silence. She says, "Tell me next time." I say, "Okay." She says, "I mean it." I know you do. She gets up and goes to the window and looks out at Ridgemore in the dark. The street has nothing moving on it, except a couple of Kevin's people doing their patrol circuit. A light on in the house across the way, somewhere distant, maybe at the edge of town, a dog barking twice and stopping. She stands there for a while. The next 3 days are a kind of recalibration I don't have a better word for. You've been operating in a certain mode, compressed, focused, every decision measured against the immediate question of survival. And then the immediate question becomes slightly less immediate, and you have to re-expand back into something closer to ordinary life. Except nothing is ordinary anymore. Kevin puts me to work quickly. He wants the county utility maps I brought. He wants to know about infrastructure, which water systems use which power sources, which emergency generators cover which facilities, which communication towers are still functional. I know more of this than most people, and what I don't know, I can read from the documentation I brought out of the community center. We spend 2 days at the high school supply depot, going through maps and talking through what Ridgemore has and what it needs. Kevin's core challenge is the same one I was facing in the basement, just scaled up. Food for a town of 4,000 people plus the refugees who've arrived, for a winter that's coming in about 6 weeks. The grain elevator at the north end of town has a substantial store. Winter wheat, mostly, plus corn, because harvest had partially finished before everything went wrong. The farms on the west side of town are still mostly intact. Kevin has already organized farm work rotations to get the remaining crops in before the frost. The eastern approaches are the security problem. The infected are present in the fields to the east, not in huge numbers, but enough to make travel in that direction difficult. Kevin has his people doing perimeter sweeps twice daily. They use noisemakers, the kind you use on boats, to draw and redirect when they spot a group moving toward town. I watch this operation, and I have thoughts about it. On the 4th day in Ridgemore, while I'm at the high school with Kevin, we hear a vehicle approaching from the highway. Kevin's people at the checkpoint stop it. Word comes back via radio. Kevin's team has a functioning radio network, which I'm now helping maintain, that it's a passenger van with 8 people, from a town called Orwell, 15 miles south. Kevin goes to the checkpoint. I go with him. The van is a 12-passenger church van with the church name still on the side, faded. The 8 people in it are a mix of ages: an older man, 2 women in their 30s, a teenage girl, a teenage boy, and 3 others. They look like the same mixture of exhausted and weary that I've seen on every face that's been through something in the last 2 weeks. The man who seems to be speaking for them is not the oldest. He's in his 50s, lean, and he gets out of the van and introduces himself as Roy Kimball. He shakes Kevin's hand in a specific way. A certain amount of pressure, a certain direct eye contact, a certain careful pleasantness, and says his group is looking for somewhere to settle, and they've heard Ridgemore is stable. Kevin runs through the standard questions. Roy answers all of them smoothly. They have supplies, limited but present. They have skills. He lists several. Medical background, agricultural, mechanical. They've come from the south, avoided the worst of the outbreak by staying on back roads. Everything he says is plausible. I stand back and watch him say it. There's something in the way Roy Kimball talks that I'm not going to be able to explain well. He's good with people. He adjusts his manner slightly for each person he addresses, warmer with Kevin, more professionally brisk with the deputy who's running the health check on his people, more informal with the teenager who comes to stand near Kevin during the conversation. It's fluid and practiced. I know a certain type of person. I've worked in emergency management long enough to encounter the type. They show up in every crisis, always early, always prepared, always with exactly the right skills to offer. They understand institutional power quickly, and they move toward it. They're often genuinely useful. They also always, eventually, have their own agenda. I say nothing to Kevin about this. I'm new here. Kevin has earned his role and doesn't need my gut feeling about a stranger to override his judgment. Roy Kimball and his 8 people are accepted into Ridgemore. He's assigned housing on the west side of town, near the farming operations. Within 2 days, he's visible all over the community, introducing himself, making himself available, doing good work. He fixes the water pump at the depot. He helps with a fence repair on the east perimeter. He sits with Kevin at the planning table. I watch this. On the 6th day after our arrival, I'm working in the high school gymnasium on radio equipment when Dennis comes in. He has his usual expression, which is slightly worried about most things, and he doesn't disguise it well. He says, "Your guy is moving weird." I say, "Roy." He says, "He went through the supply depot last night, after hours, I saw him go in. He stayed about an hour. I say, "Why were you watching?" I wasn't. I was getting water from the tank on the south side, and I happened to see him. I almost said something, and then I thought, I don't know the guy. Maybe he had a reason. But it was late. I say, "Don't say anything to Kevin yet." Dennis looks at me. I say, "I'll check it." I go to the supply depot and I go through the inventory logs. We keep careful logs because inventory discipline is the only thing standing between this town and running out of everything in January instead of February. The logs show what came in and what went out and when. I cross-reference last night's log against the day before. 3 items show a slight discrepancy, small amounts. A case of canned protein, a box of medical dressings, a bag of hand-crank radio batteries. Small enough that it might be logging error. Might be. I keep watching. On the 8th day, I follow Roy Kimball when he takes the church van out in the afternoon. He told Kevin he was doing a supply run toward the east, checking a farmhouse he'd spotted on the way in. Thought it might have usable stores. Kevin had given him permission and a fuel allocation. I take Dennis and the county utility pickup, and I follow at a distance that keeps him just visible. He goes east, but he goes further east than any farmhouse. He goes east on Route 40 for almost 4 miles, which is well past any farmhouse he could have spotted on the way in, and also puts him well into the zone we consider compromised, the zone where infected presence is significant enough that we don't go without specific reason and a plan. He pulls over at a roadside rest stop. There are people at the rest stop, 3 vehicles, a small group of people, not infected. I park the pickup half a mile back on the shoulder and use the binoculars from the depot. Roy gets out of the van and meets the people at the rest stop. I can't see faces at this distance. I can see the general shape of a conversation. Someone handing something over, Roy looking at it. A back and forth exchange. It doesn't last long. Roy gets back in the van and comes back west. I get back to town before him. That evening, I tell Kevin. Kevin's reaction is different from what I expected. He goes very quiet. He sits at the planning table and he drums his fingers once and stops. He says, "Who were the people at the rest stop?" I say, "I don't know. I couldn't see clearly." He says, "You think he's feeding information to someone?" I think he went east 4 miles, had a meeting, came back. I think the items missing from the depot are small but consistent. I think if you add those things up, the most obvious explanation is that he's either scouting or trading, and either of those things is something he should have told you about. Kevin is quiet. I say, "I could be wrong." He says, "No, you're not wrong. I've been feeling something similar, and I didn't trust it, because he's useful." He looks out the window. That's how it works, isn't it? They make themselves useful first. I say, "Yeah." He says, "What do you recommend?" I say, "I think you confront him, directly. Don't set a trap. Don't try to catch him. Just ask him what he was doing, and watch what he does with the question." Kevin does it the next morning. He calls Roy to the planning table, just the 2 of them, and me and one of the deputies, and he asks Roy about the supply run, and specifically about the extra 4 miles east. Roy handles it well, initially. He says he saw a turnoff he wanted to check. He says the people at the rest stop were just a group of travelers he had a brief conversation with. He says he didn't think it was worth reporting because nothing came of it. Kevin says, "What were you reporting to them?" Roy says, "I wasn't reporting anything." Kevin says, "What were they giving you?" Roy goes very still. And in that stillness is the answer. Not guilt, necessarily, but calculation. You can see him running through his options, and it takes just a second too long. He says, "There's another community, larger than this one. They're organized. They've been building out east, and they need information about what resources are in the towns along Route 40. I was providing that in exchange for a place at the table in their community when the time comes." Silence. Kevin says, "So you were going to leave?" Roy says, "Eventually. This isn't sustainable long term." Kevin says quietly but firmly, "Get out of this building. Leave the supplies you were taking with the deputy on your way out. You'll have your personal belongings and your van and 12 hours to be gone from this town." Roy leaves without arguing. Which tells me something about Roy Kimball. He's been through enough of these conversations in enough places that he already has the next plan ready. I watch the church van go down Main Street and out toward the highway. Kevin looks at me. He says, "What do you think is out east?" I say, "I don't know, but somebody is organized enough to be running an intelligence operation." He's quiet for a while. Then he says, "We should find out." We should, but not yet. Not this week. Winter is 6 weeks out, and we have crops to bring in and perimeter fences to repair, and radio networks to stabilize, and 4,000 people to keep safe through the next 4 months. The information gathering can wait. There's a moment, 2 weeks into Ridgemore, when I climb to the roof of the grain elevator. This is ostensibly for practical reasons. I want to extend one of our radio antennas to get better range on the east and north. But I also just want to be high up. I've been underground and inside and contained for so long that the idea of standing somewhere with a wide view appeals to me in a way that's hard to fully explain. The grain elevator is the tallest structure in Ridgemore. From the roof of it, maybe 60 feet up, I can see the town in its entirety, and then the farmland spreading away from it in every direction, and then the flat horizon of an Ohio November, gray-brown sky at the edges, and the first real bite of coming winter in the air. To the east I can see, at the limit of visibility, a cluster of something that might be vehicles, distant, not moving. Roy Kimball's destination, maybe, or something else. To the west, the highway I drove in on, empty from this distance. To the north and south, farm fields, most of them harvested now, the corn stubble standing at regular intervals across the flat ground. A coyote is crossing one of the fields, moving fast, not looking up. The town below me is alive in the way small things are alive when they're doing the work of staying alive. People moving between the housing and the depot and the school. Smoke from the wood stoves. A work crew at the east fence doing repairs. Kevin's voice on the radio in my pocket, checking in with the patrol units. I stand up there for 15 minutes, doing the work I came up to do. Antenna extension, cable tie, radio check. Everything works. Then I just stand there. The thing about working in emergency communications is that you spend a lot of time being the person who knows. Sometimes knowing is power. Sometimes it's just wait. In this case, the knowing I had that morning in October at my desk, the knowing I carried home and sealed into the basement with my family, I still don't know what it was. I haven't decided. I protected them. That's true. I made decisions with incomplete information and under enormous time pressure. And the decisions worked out, mostly, which is about all you can ever say for any decision. I also lied to them. To Diane, to my kids, even in a small way to Patricia, presenting the situation as more controlled than it was when I didn't fully understand it myself. Both of those things are true simultaneously, and I don't think they cancel each other out. The radio crackles. Kevin's voice. "Garrett, you still up there?" I press the button. "Yeah." "Antenna's reading better. Good work. We've got a farm team coming in on the East Road in about 20. Can you stay up there and keep eyes on the approach?" I say, "Yeah, I've got eyes." I do. I stand up there in the November cold with the radio in my hand, and I watch the East Road, and I watch the farm team come in, 8 people on foot, and a tractor pulling a loaded trailer, moving carefully through the stubble. They're carrying the last of the season's harvest. Winter wheat, mostly. Enough, with everything else we've put together, to get this community through to spring, maybe. The tractor stops at the elevator, and the team begins unloading. I watch from 60 feet up. Below me, the town does its small, precise work of surviving. There's a sound from the east, distant, unfocused. Could be wind, could be other things. I watch the eastern horizon. The shape of vehicles I saw earlier is still there, still not moving. Waiting, maybe, or just existing in the way that everything exists now, with unclear intent and uncertain meaning, and the slow approach of winter pressing everything toward decisions that haven't been made yet. The farm team finishes unloading. The tractor goes back. The team disperses toward their houses for the evening, moving with the particular tired purposefulness of people who've done hard physical work and know they'll do it again tomorrow. I look at the eastern horizon one more time. He has his phone in his hand, which is an old habit now that the phone doesn't really do what phones do anymore. He turns it over in his hand. He says, "I want to help with the radio stuff." I say, "You know anything about radio?" I know how to learn things. I look at him. He's 15, a little more than 15 now. His birthday passed quietly in the basement, which none of us forgot, but nobody made much of, because there were other things. He's gotten leaner in the last month, in the way kids his age get lean when they're not snacking constantly, and they're actually using their bodies for physical work. There's something different in his face, a kind of careful seriousness that sits next to his regular expression, and I think it's been there since the messages from Jarrett stopped coming in. I say, "Yeah, I'll show you the setup tomorrow." He nods. He looks at his phone one more time, and then he sets it down on the table and doesn't pick it up again for the rest of the evening. Bruno is on the floor near the wood stove. He's been sleeping more than usual since we got here. Long, slow sleeps with his paws twitching. He's an old dog in a new place, and he's handling it the way old dogs handle things, which is to say he's made peace with it by sleeping through a lot of it. His breathing sounds okay tonight, better than it did in the basement. Nora is drawing at the other end of the table. She's been drawing this town, the grain elevator, the houses on Maple Street, the checkpoint trucks. She fills her sketchbooks fast. She's on her second one already. Diane is reading by the wood stove. She found a box of paperbacks at the supply depot, someone's donation, and she's been methodically reading through them in the evenings. Right now she's reading a novel with a torn spine that I can't see the title of. She turns pages slowly, because there's no hurry, and also because she's thinking more than she's reading, which is a habit of hers I've known about for 14 years. Patricia is in the other room with Caroline. I can hear them talking. Quiet voices, nothing distinguishable. The rhythm of a mother and daughter conversation. Dennis is in the basement. He's always in the basement. The wood stove ticks. The fire settles. Outside, a patrol vehicle moves down Maple Street, its headlights briefly sweeping across the kitchen curtains and then moving on. I hear Kevin's voice on the radio someone left on in the hallway, faint and professional, doing a check-in with the east perimeter. I sit at the table, and I think about the shape on the eastern horizon. I think about Roy Kimball and what he was feeding to whoever is out there. I think about what it means that someone is organized enough, 6 weeks into the outbreak, to be running intelligence operations on neighboring communities. That's not panic. That's not survival improvisation. That's planning that started early. Which means someone, somewhere, had the same information I had and made a different choice with it. I sat on the knowledge for the time it took to get my family safe. Someone else sat on the same knowledge and started building power. I don't know yet what to do with that. I pull out the notebook I've been keeping since I left the county desk, the one I wrote the list in the car, the morning all of this started. The pages are full now with notes and sketches, and radio frequencies, and inventory numbers. I find a blank page near the back. I write, Eastern Community, unknown size, unknown leadership, information gathering operations, Roy Kimball as asset. I look at that for a while. I add, timeline, before spring. Because we're going to have to deal with it before spring. Whatever is out there, whatever they're building and whoever is building it, the question of who controls the resources and the routes in this part of the county is going to come to some kind of head before the snow melts. It always does. You can't have two organized groups in the same limited territory with limited resources and not have some kind of accounting eventually. I close the notebook. The fire ticks. The patrol goes around the block. I sit at the table. The night outside is very quiet. No infected on the East Road tonight that I know of. Kevin's patrol reported clear an hour ago. No sound from the highway. The coyote is out there somewhere in the stubble fields, going about its particular business. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I mean that honestly, not philosophically. I genuinely don't know what tomorrow's problems will be. In the county building, at my desk, the job was to receive information and route it, and follow the established protocols, and stay in your seat. The protocols told you what tomorrow looked like. Now there are no protocols. There's what we have and what we know and what we can figure out in time. And tomorrow will be shaped by those things in ways I can't predict from here, which is its own kind of weight. And also, in a way I'm still getting used to, its own kind of freedom. Tyler has fallen asleep at the table, his head on his arms. He does this sometimes, always has. Falls asleep in non-bed places when he's very tired. Doesn't notice himself doing it until he wakes up later. I look at him for a while. I put my hand on the back of his head once, lightly, and then take it away. He sleeps. The wood stove ticks. Outside, the night holds its shape against what's coming, the same way all nights do. Not indefinitely, but for now. For now it holds. I pull the radio closer and adjust the volume, and put the notebook under my arm, and go to my sleeping bag in the corner of the living room, and lie down with my eyes open, and listen to Kevin Purcell's voice, cycling through his check-ins. Patient and steady. Someone else's version of doing the job. I count the check-ins. 8, 9, 10. Somewhere around 12 I stop counting. Weeks pass in the way that weeks pass when you stop having normal weeks. Not in a blur. In the opposite of a blur. Each day distinct and fully felt because there's so little background noise to muffle any of it. You feel everything more clearly. The cold coming through the gaps in the window frame. The particular smell of the wood stove in the morning when it's just been stoked. The way the light changes over the flat Ohio fields as November becomes December, and the sky lowers, and the fields go from brown to gray, and then one morning there's snow on the ground, and the town of Ridgemore looks different under snow. Cleaner, quieter, the perimeter fences visible against the white, in a way that makes the shape of the community very clear. We are here. This is the edge. That is outside. The shape of the community, visible under snow. Kevin gets the heating situation mostly solved by December through a combination of salvaged wood stoves, organized fuel wood cutting from the trees in the windbreaks north of town, and a clever use of the grain elevator's thermal mass. The building holds heat better than anything else in town, and we've put 24 people in the ground floor of it. Crowded, not comfortable, but warm. I'm running the communications network by December. We have 3 functional radio towers, the antennas extended and properly anchored, covering the approaches to town, and connecting us to a frequency that Kevin has been testing for any other organized communities broadcasting. We've gotten 2 responses in the past 3 weeks. One from a group about 30 miles southwest, a farm collective. Sounds stable, brief, but friendly contact. One from much further north, unclear location, possibly military, very brief, and then silence. The eastern community hasn't broadcast. Whatever they are, they're not looking for radio contact. Tyler is learning the radio. He's good at it in the way he's good at things when they interest him, which is to say he goes at it completely and doesn't leave it until he understands it. By December, he's handling the morning check-ins on his own, while I work on the infrastructure side. Kevin watches this and says, to me, privately, that kid's a good one. I say, yeah. Roy Kimball hasn't come back. But on the 12th of December, one of Kevin's Eastern Patrol units comes back with a report that there are vehicles visible about 8 miles east, at the rest stop and beyond it. More vehicles than before. And smoke. The kind of smoke that means a settlement, not a fire. Kevin and I look at each other over the map. He says, spring. I say, or before, if they decide we're worth the winter effort. He's quiet. I say we should make contact. That's not what I expected you to recommend. I say, going in blind is worse than going in informed. If we initiate contact on our terms, we control the framing. He thinks about it. And if they're hostile, I say, then at least we know what they are before they're at our fence. He thinks for a long time. Then he says, draw up a plan. Radio contact first. If that gets a response, we go from there. I go to the radio room. Tyler is at the desk. I tell him what I'm trying to do and he adjusts the frequencies and we start broadcasting. Carefully. On a channel that we can cut quickly if needed. This is Ridgemore Community, Kettler Falls County, Ohio. We are an organized settlement of approximately 4,000 residents seeking to establish coordinated communication with neighboring communities for resource sharing and mutual security. If you are receiving this broadcast and are willing to establish contact, please respond on this frequency. We broadcast it twice, then wait. 20 minutes of silence, then a response. Male voice, clear, professional. He gives a community name I don't recognize, and a location that's definitely east of us, and he says he's happy to talk. I take the handset. I talk. The conversation lasts 45 minutes, which is a long time for radio contact, and means both sides find it useful. The eastern community is called Morrow Station. They have about 2,000 people. They're in a group of facilities centered on an old industrial park east of Kettler Falls that they've fortified. They have manufacturing capability, limited but real, and they're short on food stores. We have food stores, and they have manufacturing. We are, in the crude language of communities trying to survive winter, potentially useful to each other. The man on the radio doesn't tell me who leads Morrow Station. He's clearly not the top of their structure. I don't ask. Not yet. When I finish the call, Tyler is looking at me. He says, "Who do you think is running that place?" I say, "I don't know." He says, "Do you think it's someone like Roy?" I say, "Maybe." He says, "And we're going to work with them anyway?" I look at him, 15 years old, asking exactly the right question. I say, "We're going to find out what they are first, and then decide." He nods. He turns back to the radio equipment and adjusts something on the tuner. He's thinking about what I said. I can tell because he gets quiet in a specific way when he's processing, the same quiet he gets when he's reading something he actually cares about. I leave him with the radio. I go out into the December cold, down the main street of Ridgemore, past the depot and the wood stove smoke, and the people moving between buildings with their collars up against the wind. Kevin is talking to two people outside the high school. He sees me and raises his chin in a question. I give him a thumbs up. He nods. I keep walking. I go to the eastern edge of the perimeter, where the fence line runs along what used to be a soybean field. The field is white. Beyond it, more white, and then the first tree line. And beyond that, somewhere out of view, 8 miles east, Morrow Station with its smoke and its vehicles and whatever it's built itself into in the last 6 weeks. I stand at the fence. The cold is the kind that gets in through your jacket at the collar and stays there. My breath is visible and rising. I look east. Whatever is out there, we're going to have to meet it, sooner or later. Probably sooner. We're going to have to go out there and look it in the eye, and figure out what it wants, and whether that's something we can live with. I've done harder things, I think. I look east for a while longer. Then I turn and walk back into Ridgemore. The last thing I want to tell you about is not dramatic. It doesn't have much action in it. It happened on a Tuesday in early January, which I only know because I've been keeping careful track of dates in the notebook. Diane found a box in the supply depot, someone's personal donation, a box of kids' craft supplies. Nora's birthday is in January, and Diane had been quietly collecting things. She found the craft supplies, and she found a jar of good honey that someone brought in from a farm west of town. And she found, somehow, through some chain of trades and goodwill that I never fully tracked, a small chocolate bar, the kind that comes in the orange wrapper, still sealed. The birthday is on the 17th. We have a small thing in the kitchen of the Maple Street house. Nora is 12 now. She blows out a single candle. We used a birthday candle from the craft supplies, which I didn't know until that moment, that craft supply boxes sometimes contain birthday candles. And she gets the chocolate bar, which she shares carefully in 6 equal pieces, one for each person in the house, and she gets to keep the wrapper, which she puts in her sketchbook. The craft supplies, it turns out, include proper drawing pencils, better than what she had. She holds one up and looks at it, and her face does something that I can only describe as the face of someone who has been given exactly the right thing at exactly the right time, which almost never happens, and when it does, it's unreasonably moving. She says, "This is actually, these are the good kind." She says it to the pencil, not to anyone in particular. Tyler says, "Happy birthday, Nor." She looks at him, and she says, with complete composure, And zero irony. Thank you, Tyler. He laughs. So does Diane. Even Dennis, down in the basement, calls up, "Happy birthday, kid." Caroline gives Nora a drawing of Bruno that she made herself, from a reference photo on Nora's phone that she'd had saved before the cell networks collapsed. It's a good drawing. She has an eye for it. Nora looks at it for a long time, and then she puts it carefully in the sketchbook, next to the chocolate wrapper. Bruno himself is asleep by the wood stove, twitching slightly in whatever dream old dogs have. Chasing something, probably. Something that doesn't have weight or speed anymore, the way things in dreams never do. Patricia makes tea from some dried chamomile she found in the depot. We sit around the table and drink it out of mismatched mugs. That's all. That's the whole story of the birthday. But I've been thinking about it since. About how a birthday in a house in a small town in Ohio in January, with mismatched mugs and borrowed pencils and a chocolate bar shared in 6 pieces, can be one of the best birthday celebrations I've ever been part of. The baseline has changed. That's part of it. But I don't think that's all of it. I think there's something about having stripped everything down to what actually matters. Having had absolutely everything inessential removed from daily life in about 10 days, that makes the things that survive that process more visible. The pencil is the good kind. The tea is warm. Everyone in this room is alive and in reasonable health and at a table together. That's not nothing. That's actually quite a lot. I wrote it in the notebook after the birthday. Not elaborately, not with any particular polish, just Tuesday, January 17th, Nora's birthday. Everyone here. 3 lines. I close the notebook. Outside, the snow is still on the ground. January snow, packed now, old. The perimeter patrol goes by on their circuit. I can hear the radio from the hallway. Tyler's voice on it. Steady and methodical, cycling through his check-in list. Kevin's voice comes back. Clear. I lean back in my chair. I wait for spring.